Chapter 4902. How dare you? Right at this moment, Lord Guangguang, who had been ignored for a long time, suddenly let out a loud shout. It was a pity that he was small and weak, and his voice was also childish, which really did not have any majesty. Arbor's gaze finally fell on the child in He Chen's arms through the water ripple's illusion. Who is this little brat? For you. How can you open up this space-time passage and appear here in the form of an illusion? The girl in this illusion was too strange. This place was extremely deep in the sea abyss, with its light-congealing mirror as the heart of the array, an isolation array set up by the heavenly Tao. Logically speaking, no matter who it was impossible to come here in the form of a soul, and would definitely be isolated outside, but why did she? How dare you, female thief? Who are you to the heavenly Tao? Arbor stared at the little brat with a stupefied expression, staring at him through the screen. If this little brat was in front of her at this moment, she would definitely pull him over and give him a good beating. Do you know how to speak human language? Who is a female thief? Who is a female thief? Your whole family is female thieves. Speak. You are the heavenly Tao. Lord Guangguang raised his hand to cover his bald head, turning his little face to stare at He Chen with grief and indignation. How dare you, a junior, be so rude to Lord Guangguang? Ridiculous. Despicable. Extremely rude. He Chen raised his hand to pat his smooth head. Shut up, you. So long-winded. Didn't he see that his Lord Jojo's pair of watery eyes were already starting to emit fire? You dare to tell Lord Guangguang to shut up? Lord Guangguang said with a face full of anger. He Chen looked at him speechlessly. This fellow actually dared to call himself Lord in front of Lord Jojo. Was he looking for a beating? Who is this little brat? Jojo, he is the Holy Spirit of the sacred weapon, light-congealing mirror. Mo Lien raised his hand and held the child in his hand. What do you think? Arbor blinked and subconsciously raised her hand to touch her belly. She did not know if it was her misconception, but when her husband brought the light-congealing mirror Holy Spirit over, her little belly seemed to inexplicably warm. Could it be that my baby is interested in this light-congealing mirror? A strange light flashed through Arbor's mind. He immediately nodded expressionlessly and said, "It's pretty good. Let's keep it first." Everyone was speechless. You're talking about a saint spirit as if it's nothing. Keep it? Do you think I'm collecting trash? Master Guangguang immediately understood Arbor's words. Luan Yuan's eyes were filled with anger as she said, "Audacious woman, don't think that I'll contract with you just because you're pretty. My contract also depends on fate. You and me. They were not meant to be. Don't force it." The corners of Ma Shurchen's mouth twitched, and he quickly suppressed the urge to burst into laughter. I can't take it anymore. It's so fucking painful. Why did he feel like this condensing mirror Holy Spirit was a retard? Could he be any more childish and shameless? Arbor looked at the Holy Spirit of the light-congealing mirror in astonishment. He thought to himself, this Holy Spirit actually doesn't like Lord Jojo? Little guy, you're pretty good. Arbor suddenly raised her hand and placed it on her belly. This time, she really felt a wave of heat drifting over. It wasn't her imagination. Lord Jojo's eyes brightened. He rubbed his belly and lowered his head to mutter, "Don't worry, baby. Your father is keeping this light-congealing mirror. I'll give it to you later." Could it be that her baby had formed a vague self-awareness at this time? Wasn't this perception a little frightening? Mo Lien, who was looking at Jojo through the water ripples, only saw his wife mutter to herself. Chapter 4903. Because of the water ripples, he could only see Lord Jojo's upper body and did not see her rubbing her stomach. Arbor raised her head and looked at her husband. She said happily, "Jojo's lotus, keep this light-congealing mirror and give it to me later." Mo Lien quickly nodded. "Chow chow, I also found a large batch of multicolored underwater gemstones for you. Do you like them?" Multicolored? Underwater gems. Arbor's eyes lit up again. She was overjoyed. She loved shiny things the most. Her husband was indeed the best to Jojo. Hastily nodding her small head, Xiaomu hastily asked, "Hubby, when are you coming back?" "We'll be out soon after we break this isolation array." "Jojo, Wait for me at the river of forgetfulness. Don't run too far. Okay, I'll wait for you at the river of forgetfulness. Arbor added in her heart. I'll wait for you at the entrance of the sacrificial sea abyss where you disappeared. I won't run too far. The scene in front of her suddenly blurred. Arbor grabbed Emolien, who was beside her. What's going on? Why did the image suddenly become so blurry? Logically speaking, half of ancient Emolien's soul was with her and the other half was in Emolien's consciousness. As long as they wanted to, they could communicate with each other without any hindrance. As long as Emolien's consciousness was strong enough, it was impossible to break the connection. As far as she knew, Emolien's consciousness should be about the same as hers. She should have at least reached the 12th level of consciousness. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for such a sudden interruption of divine sense to occur. Unless something happened on his side. Husband, what's going on over there? Arbor wished she could pounce on the water ripples and use her hands to smooth out the floating creases and see the situation inside the water ripples. But the water ripples were shaking so violently that she could not tell what was going on over there. Her heart was in her throat when she did not know the situation. The relaxed and carefree atmosphere was destroyed in an instant. At the same time, Ma Shurchen deftly shoved Emolien, causing him to stagger. He then turned around and hacked down with his sword, blocking a glowing red claw. Clang! The claw shook his wrist and made it slightly numb. GC, who was rolling and crawling on the ground, raised her eyes slightly and saw that the ordinary-looking young man's appearance had suddenly changed under the roasting of a ball of fire. Her facial features, which were originally not very outstanding, seemed to have transformed into a butterfly. Little by little, they were reorganized and restored to their original beautiful appearance. GC's eyes were wide open. She opened her mouth and quickly turned to look at the ruthless middle-aged man. At this moment, there was no sign of the middle-aged man. The young man, who was holding a slender black sword, smirked. His eyes were sharp as he leaped to the side of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. Why did you roll over here? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal pushed him without thinking. Hurry up and scram. Don't get in the way here. You have estimated wrongly. Emolien's voice was cold, but her eyes were gloomy. The ancient suppression array created by the heavenly axiom is not to suppress the light-congealing mirror, but the ferocious beast sealed in the light-congealing mirror. Roar! A violent roar came from the light-congealing mirror. The light-congealing mirror Holy Spirit lay on Minchin's back, trembling. Her small hand grabbed his hair, and she said with a pale face, Hurry, hurry. Hurry up and suppress it. Chapter 4904. You cheater, you still have the nerve to yell here. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal slapped his bald head. Why didn't you say that the formation was suppressing this ferocious beast? If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have touched the array at all. Finding another way was much more reliable than fighting a 10,000-year-old ferocious beast. I just wanted to get rid of this formation. I didn't expect that chaos. You actually took the opportunity to escape. This retarded light-congealing mirror really killed him. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was furious. The light-congealing mirror Holy Spirit's two small hands were still tightly wrapped around his neck as it stuttered, Quick, protect Master Guangguang. Primal chaos is coming out. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal felt as if 10,000 horses were galloping through his heart. Hundun? Emolien frowned. Could it be the ancient ferocious beast, Hundun? The only response he got was half of a huge body peeking out from the small mirror. It had 6 legs and 4 wings, and it was as red as fire. It was the ferocious beast chaos that was recorded in the records of mountains and rivers. For a moment, the small black mirror with fine lines hanging high in the air was surrounded and burning by a ball of raging flames. The chaos ferocious beast walked out from the center of the mirror. It reached out with its crimson claws and slapped toward He Shurchen again. He Chin dodged backwards and hurriedly pushed Emolien, who was beside her. The primordial chaos has removed the suppression array from the inside. Hurry, find a chance to leave immediately. Take good care of Jojo, Yuan Shurchen instructed. Scram. Lien held Raven Moon in his hand and glanced at him with a straight face. Go out and tell her yourself. Roar! The primordial chaos spread its 4 wings and covered the sky. Its roar shook the earth and mountains. The karst cave in front of them collapsed due to the tremors. Gravel rolled down, and smoke and dust filled the air. Shen Wu tightly gripped his sword with both hands. He turned his head to take a look, his expression as if he had been struck by lightning. Seniors Wallon Mountain, what are you doing? The man and the snake shrank back and did not move forward. Now, he had returned to his human face and snake body form. His entire snake body was coiled tightly around the trunk of a nearby tree, pretending to be dead and motionless. Both of them were saint beasts. Why are you so far behind him? The difference was like heaven and earth. Look at the other beasts of chaos, then look at yourself. Don't you feel ashamed? Shen Wu's gaze did not provoke the human snake. He was still lying on the tree trunk, pretending to be dead and motionless. He didn't show any intention of moving. If it was possible, he would grow on this tree forever, never to move an inch ever again. Roar, roar, roar. The chaos beast roared at Lien and the others. He suddenly sucked in a breath. All of a sudden, a strong wind blew and sucked everyone forward. The natives of the Sin Kingdom were so scared that their faces turned ashen. He felt as if he was being sucked in by this fierce gust of wind, and he couldn't help but roll and crawl in that direction. Ah 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 ah, ah ah. Shouts could be heard one after another. Great feudal Lord GC's face was pale as she grabbed the long grass on the ground, trying to stabilize herself. However, the strong wind blew and she couldn't control her body at all. With a cry of surprise, she was already lifted up by the wind. She somersaulted 3 times and was sucked in. Go! Yuan Shurchen didn't hesitate and slapped Lien. Chapter 4905. GC's eyes were red with anger. She tried her best to grab onto something to control her body, but she couldn't resist the suction force of the strong wind at all. In the end, she screamed and flew out of her hands. Following the strong suction force, she rolled forward. Jichen sent Lien out with a palm, but she fell back and was sucked in by the Chaos Beast at an even faster speed. The Chaos Beast's red body emitted a red glow. It squatted there and opened its mouth to reveal its fangs, waiting for its prey to come to its door. When the 2 Sin Kingdom cultivators were pulled to its mouth by the suction force, their eyes were wide open in fear. The primal Chaos Beast lazily moved its mouth and snapped the 2 cultivators from the Kingdom of Sin into 2 halves. GC let out a shrill scream as if she was struggling for her life. Her face turned as red as a pig's liver, and it was so twisted that it was impossible to look at her directly. A beam of cold light flashed across the mouth of the Chaos Ferocious Beast and collided with its sharp teeth, making a loud noise. The Chaos Beast opened its mouth and roared. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's slender body slid past Great Feudal Lord GC and was sucked into the beast's esophagus at the speed of light. The light-congealing mirror Holy Spirit in his arms could not help but scream, "Lord Guangguang is dead because of you." Great Feudal Lord GC felt that her body was out of control. She followed the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal into the beast's mouth. When the 2 rows of teeth closed, she passed through and slid down the Chaos Beast's esophagus. Great Feudal Lord GC's face was ashen. She thought to herself, my life is over. At the same time, Lien flew far away after being slapped by Jichen. She stabilized herself with great difficulty. When she turned to look, she saw that the Chaos Beast had sucked in a large group of people. It did not care about the others and turned to walk into a large karst cave. Rotten Peach Blossom. Lien chased after it and was suddenly stopped by a figure. This coward with a human face and a snake body was finally not hanging on the tree trunk as a specimen. Lien pushed him away without hesitation. Go away. Don't get in my way. You brat, don't be ungrateful. The snake man curled his lips and shouted, didn't I stop you for the sake of your little life? That's a 10,000-year ancient sacred beast. None of us are its match. If they rushed over to their deaths, they wouldn't even be enough to be swallowed whole. Don't you see how big its appetite is? Lien turned her head and stared at him. Suddenly, A black lotus appeared in her hand. In a split second, the fragments of the flowers and leaves turned into numerous shadows, flying toward the snake man. Hey, you, why can't you recognize the good intentions of others? You even attacked me? Hey, don't hit me, don't hit me. Zhualanshan looked at Emolien, who suddenly attacked him with a dumbfounded expression. His face was full of disbelief. Didn't she see that there were only the two of them here? What good would it do for them to fight each other? Emolien was too lazy to talk nonsense with this snake man. She slapped him. The Raven Moon sword flashed continuously, forcing the snake man to take a few steps back. Bang bang bang. Upon receiving Emolien's command, the several dumb golems that were originally wandering back and forth on the side simultaneously surrounded them. The golems pushed him to the ground and pinned him down. Emolien's fists rained down on Zhualanshan's face. Chapter 4906. Zhualanshan was furious and wanted to fight back, but he found that his hands and snake tail were pressed to the ground by a few mechanical men. He couldn't move at all. What are you doing? Emolien? I'm warning you. Don't mess around, Zhualanshan screamed bitterly, almost breaking through the clouds. Don't hit me, don't hit my face. Don't hit me. Don't hit me. What are you trying to do? I know. I'll go with you to save people, okay? Zhualanshan was extremely depressed. He looked at Emolien with a bloody nose and a swollen face, his perfect expression completely cracked. Oh, where did this bastard with such a bad personality come from? Who exactly did he learn the method of beating someone up until they were convinced by his words? Emolien pulled Zhualanshan up from the ground with a cold expression. Let's go. There was no time to lose. They had to leave immediately. The more they delayed, the more danger they would be in. Since the two of them came, they naturally had to go back together. Neither of them could go missing. Jojo's lotus. Arbor reached out to touch the illusion, wanting to see what was happening. However, in the blink of an eye, the water ripples dissipated in the air. It was so fast that no one had time to react. Lotus. Arbor's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly turned to look at ancient Emolien. She saw that guy's body was faintly discernible. He looked at her with a confused expression in his pure eyes. I feel so tired. I don't think I can take it anymore. Sorry, I think I need to go into seclusion to rest. How are you? What's wrong with you? How can I help you? Arbor rushed over to support him. She stared at him anxiously and asked anxiously. I'm fine. I just feel a little tired. I feel like, before ancient Emolien could finish her sentence, she turned into a ray of light and shrunk to the size of a soul orb. She floated to Arbor's fingertip. Arbor was startled. He hurriedly reached out to grab it and put it into a brocade pouch. She was just a little flustered. The more confused she was, the more nervous she became. His mind was in a mess. How did Emolien's spirit turn into a soul bead? Was it because he was very weak? What exactly happened on his side? Was he and Rotten Peach Blossom in danger? Don't tell me Arbor didn't dare to continue thinking about it, because she felt that the more restless she was, the more flustered she was, and the more she couldn't think of a reason. She had to calm herself down. But that kind of irritable and flustered feeling was uncontrollable. Her eyes felt sour and astringent, as if something was about to come out. No, how could she be so weak? They would definitely be fine. She mustn't scare herself. Arbor took a deep breath and turned her head to look at Emo, who was standing beside her in a daze. Emo, let's go out first. Xiao Mu stored the strand of soul that had been meditating on the lotus flower without opening its eyes from beginning to end into her storage talisman. She turned and pulled Mo's sleeve. Let's go. But these lotus flowers, we reluctantly turned back to look at them. Arbor slapped her forehead. She had almost forgotten about such an important matter. No matter what, she had to refine the Pond Lotus sacred realm first. This way, she could leave the secret realm ahead of time. Chapter 4907. On the other side, there was a very narrow mountain path amidst the mountain fog. Duo Shanmei and her people were fighting a bloody battle with the corpses of the fishermen. However, the more corpses they killed, the more corpses appeared from the end of the mountain path. Everyone was held back here and had to carry out a thorough purge of the corpses. Why do I feel like there's no end to these things? A few duo clansmen couldn't help but shout in panic. The more corpses they killed, the more corpses there were, but they had already used up more than half of their spiritual power. They couldn't continue fighting like this for a long time. Duo Shanmei raised her sword and chopped off the head of a corpse puppet. She glanced at the mountain path. Don't just stand here. We have to retreat as we kill. Once we enter the mountain, there will be something to cover us, she panted as she chopped down another corpse puppet. Then, she took a deep breath and said, "Cover us for a while, and we can recover our strength. Let's go." Murong Fei made a prompt decision and retreated into the mountain fog with her two brothers. The 20 or so practitioners of the Mu family hurriedly followed the Murong family and retreated into the mountain. These damned corpse puppets, however, continued to surround and attack everyone in a frenzy. Do Xinwu was already regretting it. She didn't expect that the fishermen she saved in Haibin village had already been infected with the corpse poison, and now they had all mutated. If she knew they were so useless, she wouldn't have helped them come to Wangchuan. What a waste of her kindness. Everyone be careful, don't get bitten by the corpse puppets. Eldest young master Do, second young master, please help treat the injured. All disciples listen up, follow the Murong family, we're going into the mountain. Yun Yunji looked at the mountain with a melancholy face. Little Shimmy said she would be back in 4 hours. How long has it been? I don't know if something happened to her. Murong Fei was also very worried, but she knew it was useless to worry now. Since these corpse puppets were endless, the best way was to take the initiative to avoid them. Go. Up the mountain. Everyone follow, don't fall behind. The group of people fought and retreated, retreating into the mountain fog. At this moment, everyone felt the ground under their feet shake. In an instant, it seemed like the whole ground was shaking. What's going on? Why do I feel like the scenery in front of me keeps swaying? Don't you feel the same way? The tree in front of me is really swaying. It's not the tree that's shaking, it's your entire body. Everyone looked at each other. Sure enough, they found that the other party was swaying uncontrollably, unable to control themselves at all. Duo Shanmei tried her best to stabilize herself. What's going on? Why was the earth shaking? Could it be that another ferocious beast is coming out? Shut up. The others all rolled their eyes at her. The ichthyosaur from before had already caused all of them to be on the brink of death. If something like a holy beast were to appear now, they would really be powerless to reverse the situation. Miss Murong, why aren't you nervous at all? What do I have to be nervous about? Anyway, it's not like I'm the only one swaying. Everyone is swaying. Everyone was speechless. What he said seemed to make sense. Are we still going up the mountain in this situation? A member of the Duo clan could not help but ask. Why are we still going up the mountain? Haven't you noticed that the scenery in front of you is slowly fading away? Chapter 4908. Is that so? The mystic realm is about to collapse. Someone suddenly shouted. Most people hadn't considered this before. Now that they heard this, realization dawned on them. Duo Shanmei's expression tightened. The mystic realm is about to collapse? Then what should we do? Will we be spat out by the mystic realm or be killed? We won't be killed, right? Someone muttered stutteringly before quickly shaking his head. We won't. Eldest young Sir Qin curled his lips. Why are you panicking? You're all like headless flies when you encounter such a small matter. Don't worry, it should be fine. We should be able to get out very soon. Eldest young sir, is what you say true? Several Duo clan members stole a glance at him in disbelief. Seeing this young sir's calm expression and relaxed expression, they couldn't help but feel more at ease. Murong Fei raised her brows. Why the heck did she not know? She actually had a strange premonition that the collapse of this mystic realm seemed to have a lot to do with her little junior sister. After all, her little junior sister had been missing for so long. Who knew what she was doing in secret? It seems to have stopped. Do Tingqi heaved a sigh of relief and patted his chest. Fortunately, It seems to be a false alarm. Just as he finished speaking, his entire body suddenly fell down. As a result, he was completely defenseless. He instinctively let out a cry of surprise before disappearing from everyone's sight. Duo Shanmei and the rest widened their eyes in horror, as if 10,000 horses were galloping through the depths of their hearts. They hadn't even freaking finished speaking, and he was already gone. The scenery before them was like layers of fine silk, twisting and turning. Everyone couldn't help but sway uncontrollably as they cried out in alarm. Eldest young Sir Qin's expression remained calm as he waved the folding fan in his hand. He said with a grin, "No need to panic. We're just going out a little earlier. Take care to protect yourselves. Just don't get warped by the space here." What do you mean? Could it be that the space would warp when they went out? Would they die if they were careless? Damn it, who on earth made this happen? How could a mystic realm collapse all of a sudden? Elder brother, be careful. Murong Fei took a deep breath. She felt her body move and was pulled out uncontrollably. The scenery in front of her eyes changed, and she once again stepped onto the beach of Lotus Pond Island that was covered with fine gauze. Layers of waves approached from afar, slapping against the nearby reefs, making gurgling sounds. After the two Duo clan members were teleported out, they stood there in a daze. When they heard the sound of heavy breathing from behind them, they turned around and saw two zombies with rotting flesh hanging from their faces. They were rapidly charging towards them from behind. The two Xiozhi raised their swords and chopped off the head of the corpse puppet. They exhaled deeply. The two of them gripped their swords and raised their heads to look ahead. They saw the little stoic standing in midair, and they didn't know when she had appeared in that place. Floating in front of her was a sparkling and translucent orb. Under its transparent luster, one could see something flowing slowly within the orb. Lotus. It was a lotus. There are so many lotuses. The Duo clan member pointed at the orb in front of Arbor, unable to hide his surprise. Do Xinwu sucked in a breath of cold air and tugged at her brother's sleeve. It was the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm. This damn girl refined the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm. What ability did he have to actually refine the entire mystic realm? Chapter 4909. When Do Tingqi fell out of the mystic realm just now, he was fiercely frightened, and his expression was still somewhat absent-minded. He only regained his senses after his sister tugged at him a few times. May, your throat hasn't recovered yet, please stop. Do Tingqi stuttered out a few words, but was immediately pushed away by Do Xinwu. How could her eldest brother's personality be so soft? How could he be qualified for the position of the Do family's patriarch in the future if he didn't fight for anything? He wouldn't really be willing to give the position of patriarch to those two things from the lower star domain, right? Despicable. Do Xinwu saw that she couldn't get her eldest brother to budge and hastily walked forward. She stared icily at Arbor and involuntarily clenched her fists. Arbor floated in front of her with his eyes closed and that lustrous pond lotus heart floating in front of him. The more Do Xinwu looked, the harder it was to restrain her excitement. The more she looked, the more she felt that if she didn't make a move now, when would she? The treasure had no owner, so it belonged to whoever snatched it. When she thought of this, her body suddenly moved. At the same time, she stretched out her right hand and spread her fingers, reaching for that orb that was extremely attractive to her. This was the refined mystic realm if she, Do Xinwu, could obtain such a heavenly abode, not to mention how much her strength would increase. Just the 4 words portable divine realm would make people's hearts tremble and their blood vessels expand. If she could obtain this natural divine realm, she would naturally flourish in the Do family in the future. She might even be able to change precedent and become the first female patriarch in the history of the Do family. Do Xinwu, whose heart was burning with passion, didn't notice that the little stoic's eyes were slowly opening. Do Xinwu's fingers grabbed at the pond lotus heart and was about to grab this condensed heart of the mystic realm into her hands. Unexpectedly, that orb flew out with a whoosh and shot out of her reach like a catapult. Pond Lotus Sage Realm. Do Xinwu took a deep breath and stared at the orb. She didn't care about anything else. Just as she was rushing forward, everyone couldn't help but look at her as if they were looking at a weirdo. The Xiozha below were doing their best to kill the corpse puppets, but this girl was like an idiot, suddenly attacking Qi Lian Xing. Did she think that they were all blind? That none of them could see the pond lotus heart hanging in the air? The reason why he didn't make a move was naturally because it was obvious that since the pond lotus sacred land had been refined by someone, it naturally belonged to the person who refined it. Could it be that he could change to another person midway and take you as his master? It's not like you're prettier than others. This method of highway robbery was too low-end, wasn't it? Do Xinwu twisted her body in midair and flipped a few times. Her eyes were wide open as she raised her hand to catch the lotus pond core that was flying everywhere. This round bead seemed to be within reach, but every time she reached out to grab it, it would quickly slip away. It was so fast that she had no time to react. Do Xinwu's eyes turned red, and a trace of anxiety flashed in her eyes. Everyone was fighting with the corpse puppets, and they only needed to raise their heads slightly to see that girl chasing after the pond lotus heart like a retard. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that the sentient heart of the mystic realm was teasing this girl. However, Do Xinwu didn't notice it at all and continued to chase after the heart of the mystic realm, running back and forth in all directions. Chapter 49:10. Arbor opened his eyes. His eyes were like ice as he stared at Do Xinwu, who was running all over the place. A sinister black light flickered in the depths of his eyes. When Do Xinwu once again chased after the heart of the secret realm and arrived in front of her, Arbor decisively pointed at her. Do Xinwu instantly felt a vast and mighty divine power cleave towards her. Without thinking, she hastily dodged to the side and leaped backwards. In the blink of an eye, the lustrous orb flew past her with a whoosh and abruptly landed in Arbor's hand. Do Xinwu abruptly raised her head and glared at Arbor, her eyes practically spitting out raging flames. Unable to speak, Do Xinwu could only stomp her feet as if venting her anger. She then pointed at Arbor and gestured with her hands and feet. Arbor didn't bother to look at her and directly put the heart of the secret realm back into his sleeve before turning to look at those zombies. Do Xinwu was so angry that her face turned ghastly white, and a sharp murderous aura surfaced on her face. From the beginning until now, she had continuously suffered at Arbor's hands and been unlucky. She couldn't endure this kind of rage anymore after accumulating until now. Younger sister. Do Tingqi saw that the situation wasn't good and hastily rushed forward, grabbing his younger sister's arm. He glanced nervously at Do Xinwu and advised softly, "Younger sister, don't get into a conflict with the Grand Crown Princess." When Do Xinwu saw her older brother's submissive appearance, she couldn't help but get angry. Other older brothers would help their younger sister, but her older brother couldn't help her at all. Instead, he liked to drag her down. She, Do Xinwu, had endured until now. Did she still need to endure? Miss, you can't be thinking of fighting with the little stoic, right? Ling floated over with a grin and glanced at Do Xinwu curiously. Let me give you a word of advice. You definitely aren't her match. It's important to know one's limits. When this little stoic became ruthless, even he felt a bit flustered inside, let alone this young lady who was merely a great spiritual master. Even if she rushed up, she wouldn't even last a single slap from the little stoic. Do Xinwu gasped for breath and suddenly threw herself forward. She opened her mouth and called out 4 words, "My treasure pearl." Arbor didn't even look at her. He felt a gust of wind coming at him. He covered his Vajra talisman with one hand and brushed it away mercilessly. What do you mean by yours? What do you have here? What a joke. They all belong to Jojo. Do Xinwu only felt a gust of wind blowing against her face, so much so that she couldn't even open her eyes. She suddenly felt a sharp pain on her left cheek as she was slapped so hard that she was sent flying. Ling's face was full of smiles as he hurriedly stepped to the side. He turned back to look at Miss Do, who had been sent flying, and shook his head speechlessly. See, he had already warned this Miss Do not to go up and ask for trouble, not to go up and ask for a snub. Yet he refused to listen to the advice of his elders. He was really at a disadvantage. Ling chuckled as he turned his head, only to see the little stoic's figure rapidly descending. She held a club horizontally in her hand and smashed it towards the zombie horde without any explanation. Bang! The zombie horde was instantly torn to pieces by the little stoic's attack. Arbor's small face was cold and stern as he kicked two zombies towards Elder Steward Luo in passing. The zombies were dizzy and disoriented as they tripped and stumbled to their feet. Just as they were about to pounce at Elder Steward Luo, they hastily retreated a few steps and fled with their tails between their legs. Chapter 49:11. Arbor's gaze became incomparably ferocious in a split second, and without another word, he abruptly shot a handful of penetrating bone nails at old manager Luo. At the same time, the sharp weapon in his hand flashed. "Get out of the way!" Young Master Omega Kotoku had been paying attention to the little girl's movements the entire time, and he couldn't help but be shocked when he saw her actions. Bang! A huge tremor reverberated in this small part of Lotus Pond Island. Old manager Luo's complexion darkened as he stared at the huge crater 3 meters away that was blasted open by the divine power bead. This was really an unreasonable little lunatic. She would throw the god power bead at any random crowd without giving them any chance to explain. Could it be that she didn't know that divine power beads couldn't be thrown around carelessly? If he was really hit by the divine power bead, even with his cultivation, he would probably be in deep trouble. The fifth young master's beautiful face was a bit pale. She turned to look at old manager Luo's face, which was as black as the bottom of a pot, and then turned to look at Arbor, who was similarly frosty and silent with pursed lips. She couldn't help but be bewildered. Why was Jojo so emotional? They hadn't seen each other for several hours, so why did he attack the Chin Estates people as soon as he saw them? You scared me to death." Feather patted his chest and cried out pitifully, "Stoic, what are you doing? If you want to throw a corpse puppet, then throw one. Don't throw it at a crowd. This divine power bead can kill people." "Young Master Dugu, I think there's something wrong with your eyesight." Old manager Luo couldn't put on that Methreya Buddha-like face anymore, and he angrily said with a darkened face, "Just now, the crown princess attacked our Chin estate. She threw the divine power bead at our Chin estate's people. She wants us to die." Arbor coldly answered with a single word. A severe light flashed in her hand, and a thunderclap sword that could cut through iron like mud and sever hair appeared in her hand. "Not only do I want you to die, I also want you to die without a proper burial ground." The pupils of young Master Omega Kotoku and the others contracted slightly, and they immediately saw the little stoic swatting down with a sudden thunder. The sword light was mixed with wisps of lightning as it charged towards the crowd. The rest of the people couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts, "Oh my God!" This facial paralysis was too frightening. How could he turn hostile just like flipping the pages of a book? He simply caught people off guard and had no time to react. Boom! A deep crack appeared on the ground. Arbor held his sword in his hand, and the light of thunder climbed along the blade, making a sizzling sound. What happened? Eldest young Sir Chin lowered his head to look at the large fissure in front of the Chin estate, and his heart involuntarily skipped a beat. "Do you still want to continue pretending?" Arbor looked at him coldly. "The harpies have already gathered outside the island, haven't they? Let them come." The little crown princess shouted. She raised her sword slightly and pointed it at the people from the Chin estate. "Shouldn't we get to know each other again? Young Master Qin Xian, manager of Heavenly Fate." "Ah?" The disciples from the Mu clan, Murong clan, and other patrician families all looked at the people from the Chin estate in astonishment. What was the little stoic saying? What manager of Heavenly Fate? Could it be that the little lady suddenly flared up at others not because of some other reason, but because these people from the Chin estate standing in front of them were all from Heavenly Fate? Do Tingqi trembled from head to toe, and he stammered, "Why, your crown princess, why could it be that you're mistaken?" Chapter 49:12. This is the Chin estate, the #1 aristocratic family in our divine continent. Yes, that's right. How could the Chin estate have anything to do with heavenly fortune? At the very least, even if someone in the Chin estate had sought refuge with heavenly fortune, It definitely wouldn't be that smiling and elegant eldest young master. That's right. The Qin estate. How could the Qin estate be heavenly fortune? Arbor ignored the noisy chatter around him and merely stared coldly at eldest young Master Qin before shifting his gaze to old steward Luo. Aren't you going to reveal your identity? Things have already come to this point, there's no need to hide anymore. Ha! Old steward Luo sneered. Old steward Luo. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by eldest young Master Qin. Young master. Old steward Luo bowed in greeting. Since she has already seen through our identities, there's indeed no need to hide anymore, right? Luo Qizhong, you speak too much nonsense. Second young Master Qin glanced at him coldly, and his 5 fingers swiftly condensed into a long whip of lightning. Without allowing for an explanation, he whipped it at old steward Luo's chubby old face. Didn't you hear eldest brother tell you to shut up? Second young master. Old steward Luo endured the pain and bowed. Even if you and eldest young master are extremely unwilling, there's really no need to continue concealing this matter now that things have come to this. Murong Fei and the others were already stupefied. They glanced dumbly at eldest young Master Qin and the others. This was too horrifying. The Qin estate actually joined heavenly fortune? What did Jojo mean just now? The Qin estate's eldest young master was the head of heavenly fortune? Therefore, the Qin estate didn't join heavenly fortune at a later stage, and this eldest young master of the Qin estate had always been the head of heavenly fortune from start to finish? No, that couldn't be. Everyone cast bewildered glances in the direction of the Qin estate, sizing them up. Looking at Grand Duke Qin and Ziqin's second young masters, they truly looked like elegant young masters in a chaotic world. It was truly hard to associate them with those filthy zombies. Looking at those zombies and then looking at these young masters, it was truly too difficult. Jojo. Eldest young Master Qin suddenly chuckled softly and winked at her. Why are you so smart? You won't grow up. Xiao Mu expressionlessly looked at him. Although her expression was calm, she was heavily guarded on the inside. You can't catch me, she said coldly. Why do you say that? Master, old steward Luo's young master's help, old steward Luo's young master. The old ghost's face was struck by a lightning whip, leaving a shallow scar from his left cheek to his chin. However, his expression didn't change, and his heart didn't skip a beat, as though the whip that the second young master had bestowed didn't land on his face at all. I'll do it myself, eldest young Master Qin said faintly, and his figure suddenly flashed in front of Arbor like lightning. Arbor had long been on guard against him. Seeing him flash in front of her, she pursed her lips and didn't speak, smashing a fist over. Boom! Eldest young Master Qin flicked his sleeves to block it. His small fist was like a diamond drill, and the power of his strike was abnormally fierce. You refined the Pond Lotus Sage realm just now, and now you're about to advance, right? What a coincidence. My Jojo. You can die now. Arbor swept her sword across. Chapter 49:13. Accompanied by the sound of wind, a lightning strike landed on eldest young Sir Qin's sleeve with a whoosh. The little stoic took a quick step and flipped in midair. At the same time, she flashed backward with a flying kick. Eldest young Sir Qin curled his lips and drawled, Jojo, if you run away, none of these people here will survive. Duo Shanmei and the others, who were fighting with the zombies, stiffened their weapons in their hands. They were well aware that this eldest young Sir of the Qin estate wasn't joking. Since everyone present already knew their true identities, then today's battle was unavoidable. The icy words spat out by this eldest young Sir of the Qin estate made people's hearts tremble uncontrollably. Duo Shanmei clenched her sword and hacked apart a zombie. Just as she turned around to speak, she heard several clansmen anxiously shout, "Oh no, eldest young miss, many harpies are flying in from outside the island." The little crown princess was right. Duo Shanmei and the others' expressions turned extremely unsightly in a split second. It looked like the Qin estate's eldest young Sir and his party were planning on keeping all of them here. It made sense when they thought about it. They definitely wouldn't allow anyone present to go out and spread the news recklessly. Jojo, why are you so disobedient? Eldest young Sir Chin sighed softly. Can't you be obedient? Arbor couldn't be bothered to waste words with this person. He used 1,000 lightning phantoms, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts scattered across the sky, directly blasting several enormous holes in the ground. Go! The little stoic shouted coldly. Murong Fei, Mujiating, and the others reacted extremely swiftly and directly activated a teleportation talisman matrix. With a whoosh, they swiftly disappeared from the scene in a flash of light. Ignorant and naive people. Luo Qizhong sneered. Our people control everything within a radius of 1,000 feet. Do you think you can teleport out? Jojo. Eldest young Sir Chin sighed. In your current situation, it's not suitable for you to fight with all your strength. How about we both stop at the same time? Fine. Sir Jojo harumphed. I'll believe you for the time being. I'll count to 3 and you and I will stop. Eldest young Sir Chin wanted to laugh and nodded with a I'll listen to you. 1, 2, 3. After Arbor shouted 1, 2, 3, and saw that eldest young Master Chin had indeed stopped, he sent out the third move of the 9 Heavens Thunderclap spell, 10,000 swords returning to origin with a swish. Everyone saw thousands of sword shadows converge into a large sword, which slashed towards eldest young Master Chin's chest. The swift and fierce sword was merciless. Junior, how dare you? Elder Luo exclaimed and hastily took a few steps forward. Jojo, you little liar, you're lying to me again. Eldest young Master Chin sighed, and a suit of holy armor swiftly covered his entire body. He stretched out his left hand, and a blood-red longsword suddenly appeared in his hand. Then he instantly slashed out 100,000 meters of water light. In a split second, the huge sword phantom that Sir Jojo had swung out, which was rushing towards his chest, was completely destroyed. Arbor was stunned. It was rare to see this eldest young master make a move. Who would have thought that when he made a move, his cultivation level would be at the Saint Realm? This person who pretended to be a little white flower all day long and only knew how to ask Jojo to save his life when someone came knocking on his door was actually a transcendent god expert. Strike him to death, strike him to death, strike him to death. Arbor's small hand shook, and hundreds of thunder spirit talismans shot out. Although this wasn't enough to kill a transcendent god expert, it still caused everyone present to be flustered for a while. Damn it, the thunder spirit talismans suddenly exploded. Chapter 49:14. Luo Qizhong and the others instantly descended into chaos. They would be fools if they didn't dodge the lightning bolts descending from the sky one after another. Arbor took advantage of this chaos to turn around and glance coldly at eldest young Sir Chin. She suddenly flew up and leaped into the earth fissure. Xiao, eldest young Sir Chin was startled. He didn't expect the little stoic to make such an unexpected move. Under the earth fissure, she's going into the sea. Luo Qizhong hastily pushed aside the lightning bolts and shouted angrily, "Hurry and stop her! Get out of my way!" Young Sir Omega Kotoku kicked aside the people swarming to his side and then leaped down into the earth fissure. This little lady was too infuriating. Her brain turned quickly, and her thoughts were nimble and ever-changing. She was abominably wicked. No wonder she repeatedly destroyed the island during the battle earlier and created deep pits and fissures. As it turned out, she wanted to escape. She ran when she couldn't win and even chose to escape into the sea. If she was allowed to enter the sea, she would be like a fish in water. They probably wouldn't be able to catch up to her. Arbor jumped into the earth fissure. As she fell, she could faintly hear the sound of flowing water. Her judgment wasn't wrong. This place was indeed connected to an underground water vein. Very soon, she would be able to. When she heard the sound of the wind, Arbor looked up, and her expression changed slightly. She saw a black figure rushing toward her at extreme speed. "Go to hell, you damn swindler who just won't leave." Arbor shook out the last 3 god power beads from her storage talisman and tossed them all at him. Loud noises reverberated in the narrow earth fissure. The stone fissure on both sides collapsed toward the middle and closed up, barely blocking Qin Xian's path. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Mu accelerated downwards at a speed comparable to light. spam. Qin Xian's face was filled with cold fury. She slapped away the stone wall in front of her and swiftly tore down the obstacles in front of her before swiftly chasing down the earth fissure. Soon, Sir Jojo would be able to enter the sea soon. A black figure flashed by and grabbed Arbor's arm as she jumped into the water. The little stoic only felt a burst of pain on her arm, and her entire body was pulled around by Sir Omega Kotoku in an irresistible position. Boom! The passageway below was shaken by the second young master's palm strike, causing rocks to roll and collapse. Meeting his pair of eyes that were as black as a serene pool and brimming with severity, Xiao Mu tightly pursed her lips and glared angrily. Get lost! Am I indulging you too much? Omega Kotoku grabbed her arm and said angrily, Aren't you worried that you'll get hurt if you act so recklessly? Who's fooling around? Your whole family is fooling around. Arbor angrily tried to pull his arm back. It's none of your business whether I'm injured or not. Don't you think you've gone too far? What was this person trying to do by haunting them all the time? Back at the Royal Academy, your father didn't send people to kill me entirely because I killed one of your doppelgangers. He wanted me dead. He wanted me dead more than once. It was because I hindered the heavenly fortune and blocked your path, right? Regardless of whether you believe it or not, I never thought of harming you from beginning to end. Qin Xian stared at her with her dark eyes and said each word clearly. Jojo, why aren't you willing to believe me just this once? Believe you? Arbor's watery eyes were filled with boundless fury. Chapter 49:15. If I believe you, I'll die without a burial ground again? She angrily flung her hand away. Let go! Omega Kotoku naturally wouldn't let go of her. He took a step forward and tightly gripped her arm. Jojo! Starlight seemed to scatter in that pair of pitch-black eyes. Qiao Qiao! He called out to her in a low voice, as if he had called out to her in such a gentle manner many years ago. Heh, aren't you just a little trash, a little slave? Arbor's gaze contained a hint of provocation as he coldly looked at him, his lips curled up in a mocking smile. That pair of beautiful eyes was really too cold. It was so cold that Omega Kotoku couldn't help but shiver slightly, a hint of fear rising in his heart. Oh no. She wasn't a little trash, nor a little slave. She was his Jojo. He had never thought of her this way in his heart. Never, not even once. This is Lotus Pond Island. Big Brother has already set up an inescapable net. You won't be able to escape. You guys are really capable. Arbor coldly laughed as he fiercely shook off his hand and glanced down. He saw that the passageway that led to the underground water had already been destroyed by Omega Kotoku's palm. It was temporarily impassable. I want to find a place to go into seclusion. All right. As long as you don't plan to escape and leave my side, you can do whatever you want. Omega Kotoku thought to himself. Young master. Young master. The collapsed rocks above were moved away by a group of people in a flurry. The fifth young master's slightly pale face appeared amidst the layers of light and shadow, and his fawn-like eyes stared unblinkingly at Xiao Mu. Arbor couldn't be bothered with anyone else and directly jumped up. He heard Dugaling laugh as he said, Aya Jojo, are you hurt? Are you all right? Arbor's face was cold as ice. He didn't say a word as he turned around and walked a few steps. Just as old steward Luo was about to draw his saber, he was glared at by the second young master. Damn it! Were they going to let this troublemaker continue to stay on their ship? Old steward Luo put away his saber and glanced at Arbor. He quickly put on the smiling Methria face and asked, Second young master, do you have any orders? Omega Kotoku refused to speak to him at all. He ordered, Take everyone back to the ship first. Duo Shanmei and the others also wanted to fight them to the end, but unfortunately, the other party had mobilized tens of thousands of harpies. When they saw the formation, they knew that they had no chance of winning and could only surrender. The disciples of the aristocratic families trembled as they were escorted onto the ship. They stood on the deck and looked at each other. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Let's go. A few low reprimands could be heard. The whip swung down heavily. Mu Jiating raised his hand to block it for Mu Wuzi, leaving a bloody mark on the back of his hand. Arbor was walking to the cabin door on the second floor. When he turned around and saw this scene, fury ignited in his eyes. Isn't it enough that you've captured them? Family head. When the Mu family disciples heard Arbor's voice, they hastily looked up. They saw their young family head leaning over the railing and looking at them. It turned out that their family head also couldn't escape. The hearts of the Mu family disciples sank slightly. Who told you to attack? Omega Kotoku still wanted to reconcile with the little stoic, so he naturally didn't want anyone to offend her. These insensible things just had to attack people from the Mu family of all people. Chapter 49:16. No matter how useless the Mu clan was, they couldn't do anything in front of the little girl. Only the little girl could do anything to them, no one else could. Under the second young master's sharp gaze, Dugaling blinked his eyes and flew forward with a smile on his face. With a smile, he stretched out his hand and slit the throat of the Heavenly Fate Sect disciple, throwing him into the sea. The group of aristocratic children standing on the deck were all startled, and subconsciously shrank a little towards the center. Attacking just like that was too scary. If he was so cold-blooded to his own people, then what about these disciples? In the eyes of the young master Omega Kotoku, killing them was no different from killing a chicken or a duck, right? Arbor turned and entered the room. She needed to go into seclusion right now. Eldest Chin was right. She had just finished refining the Pond Lotus Sage realm and had too much divine power in her body. She needed to digest and absorb it one by one. It was best not to be disturbed again. Arbor closed the cabin door and threw out a shielding array around herself before sinking into cultivation. After sorting out the divine power in her body, she slowly guided it into her Dantian's star field. Her star field still looked dim and dark. Clearly, she still couldn't enter. Arbor knew that she couldn't be anxious. As long as her divine sense recovered a little every day, it would be better. 3 days later. Boom! The sound of a kick came from the cabin door. Arbor had already retracted all the divine power back into her body. Her cultivation had also steadily increased to the beginning of the 7th level of God tier. At this moment, when he heard the sound of kicking outside the cabin door, he only moved his eyebrows slightly and slowly opened his eyes. 7th brother, what do you want now? 5th young master's gentle and somewhat distant voice came from outside the door. Ah, so it's 5th brother. What? I'm looking for trouble with that woman. Do you think you can stop me? I just want to remind you. Big brother already said not to disturb Miss Chiao for the next few days. Qin Chang's handsome face twisted slightly, then he said with a smile that wasn't a smile, What? You want to use Big Brother to pressure me again? If you continue to be so reckless, I can only report to Big Brother. Qin Chang pointed at the cold-faced 5th young master, kicked the cabin door hard and shouted, I'm just passing by. They always used Big Brother and 2nd brother to pressure him. How could a trifling good-for-nothing actually have a higher status than him, 7th young master Qin, in the clan? Big Brother actually trusted him more than himself. How hateful. He would let this brat be proud for 2 more days. He remembered that Big Brother and 2nd brother would be making a trip to the Forgotten River clan in 2 days. At that time Humph. The 5th young master looked back at the 7th young master worriedly and frowned slightly. Should he inform Big Brother about this matter? She felt that 7th brother was looking for trouble again. The cabin door was suddenly pulled open. Hearing the sound of the door opening, 5th young master hurriedly turned around and happened to meet the young lady's cold eyes. Chow chow chow. The 5th young master stammered. Are you hungry? According to his understanding of the little girl over the past few days, the reason why she was willing to go out was to eat. Arbor cast him a glance and originally didn't want to give him a good look. Thinking back, this pitiful 5th Qin didn't seem to have offended her from beginning to end, so his expression couldn't help but soften. 5th young master Qin had been cautiously observing her expression all along. Chapter 49:17. When he saw that the little stoic's expression had eased up a bit, his heart involuntarily relaxed, and he hastily smiled fawningly at her. Jojo, dinner and snacks are ready. I'll have someone bring them over, okay? Arbor harumphed. She originally wanted to roar at him, "Do you think I'll still eat your Qin family's food?" But on second thought, it would be a waste not to eat. Why would she make life difficult for her stomach? She really was a fool. Hence, she nodded her small head reluctantly and said with a cold expression, "Quickly bring it over." The fifth young master swiftly turned around to instruct the servants, not feeling that there was a problem at all. Little Fifth Qin was already used to the little lady's emperor-like tone when she gave orders. As long as the little lady gave an order, he would do it. The little stoic was sitting in the cabin, flipping through a thin book of plants when she heard a light sound coming from the door. The fifth young master ordered several servants to bring in a sumptuous dinner. Afterward, eldest young master Qin also followed in with a grin, still wearing a familiar expression as he greeted Sir Jojo. "Jojo, did your advancement go smoothly?" Arbor rolled her eyes at him. "Don't you know how to see for yourself if you have eyes?" Eldest young master sat down in front of her with a grin and muttered to himself, "It looks like it went very smoothly." Arbor picked up her bowl of rice and couldn't be bothered with him, minding her own business as she ate. She could only find an opportunity to escape after eating her fill. In any case, her realm had stabilized now, so she could escape at any time. But before that, she still had to find that bunch of weaklings from the Mu family. Murong Fei, Murong Yen, Yun Yunji, and the others were also in their hands. She had to rescue these convenient senior brothers and sisters and take them away as well. "When did you start suspecting me, Jojo?" Eldest young Master Qin asked with a grin, as if he was only asking some trivial questions related to daily life. Arbor's hand that was picking up food paused, and she unhurriedly put a piece of red braised pork into her mouth. "Jojo, I'm very curious." Arbor put down his bowl and chopsticks and straightened his expression. He looked up at the handsome young man sitting in front of him with a smile on his face. She asked very seriously, "Are Seven Flowers and Gong Song Fong your people or Omega Kotoku's people?" "My people," eldest young master admitted without hesitation. Arbor nodded. Some of the questions he had in the past could now be connected. That's why the matter of the Red River Canyon. At that time, Gong Song Fong, who was still the ghost-faced hall master, sent you a message through the communication jade amulet when he used the spirit stone cannon to bombard us, right? "That's right, Jojo. I've never thought of harming you." The eldest prince sighed. "You even noticed such a small detail? It was your father who wanted to kill me. At that time, the internal strife within Tianyun was because your father's subordinates were very dissatisfied with Gong Songfeng's attitude. They believe that Hall Master Gong of the Underground Hall deliberately let us go. However, Hall Master Gong had actually received your order." The eldest young master nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking rice. "I was the one who ordered them not to harm you." Arbor didn't appreciate it at all and glanced at him coldly. "You're really good at pretending. Even I was kept in the dark by you all this time. I only saw through your identity recently. Of course, perhaps it's because there's a worrisome manager Luo by your side, and he deliberately let me see through your identities." Chapter 49:18. Eldest young sir raised his brow with a smile. The little stoic ladled a bowl of soup for herself and only put it down after finishing it. She glanced coldly at eldest young sir and said, "Don't you think it's a coincidence? You and second young sir would always show up on time every time zombies appeared. Did you want to see with your own eyes how big the scene your organization created was? When we were cleaning up Jiaozhong base, you came along. You killed the corpse puppets and chopped down the nightingale birds. Who would have thought that this young master, who worked hard to kill evil creatures, was the true master of the Heavenly Fate Underground Hall?" Arbor sneered. "Actually, you just wanted to inspect the situation that time and see how things were progressing, right? When the water source was contaminated, you even discussed it with us. Actually, you were well aware that you were the one who ordered the contamination of the water source, right?" Eldest young Sir Qin hastily shook his head. "That's not it. You've wronged me in this matter. Second younger brother sent people to do it. The inspection wasn't false. I wanted to see how second younger brother's subordinates were doing." Arbor sneered. "When we were heading to the Sun Moon secret realm, You sent people to ambush us in the crevice of the Red River Canyon. Now that I think about it, you disappeared for a long time back then. When you reappeared, you were injured, so Chinjo brought you here for treatment. This was all part of your plan. Jojo is so smart. Arbor glanced at him. Later, when we entered Phoenix Forest for practical experience in the Heavenly Fate ranking preliminaries, we encountered tens of thousands of man-eating bees. It was actually your Heavenly Fate underground hall that attracted them, right? However, you and Omega Kotoku were both in our team at that time, so why did you help us? Was it also to conceal your identity? Of course not. Eldest young Sir Chin looked at him with a grin and said matter-of-factly, "It was because of you. Jojo wanted to protect those students from the Imperial Academy, so how could we disappoint you?" Arbor couldn't be bothered with this guy's frivolous banter. For me? After that, a large group of harpies came to attack us under Gong Songfeng's lead? You weren't there at that time. You guys were late until the matter was over. At that time, I really didn't suspect you. Duan Yu seems to have gone on his way before I did. I remember that Duan Yu even said to you, "It's too much of a coincidence, you guys came right after the matter ended." Now that I think about it, I'm still not sharp enough. I'm not good at connecting the causes and effects of these events. Eldest young Sir Chin hastily shook his head and praised, "Jojo is already very impressive." When we met again this time, he was constantly on guard against me. Eldest young Master Chin sighed. If Jojo hadn't buried so many Thunderfire bombs on the original pleasure boat, I wouldn't have had to risk 100,000 gold coins to summon the carcass sharks and destroy the original boat with the help of the storms so that everyone could change boats. Wouldn't Jojo be even more suspicious of me now that we've changed the boat? Xiao Mu gazed at her coldly. I trusted my own judgment too much. I do suspect you, but that's all. At that time, she didn't know whether it was a coincidence that eldest young Sir and the rest saved her while she was drifting in the river of forgetfulness, or whether it was this eldest young Sir's meticulous plan. After that, they kept finding all kinds of reasons to keep her on the boat, so she became increasingly suspicious. But if this suspicion was confirmed, she would have detonated the Thunderfire bombs long ago. Chapter 49-19. Who manages Flying Paradise? Arbor suddenly asked coldly. Flying Paradise's Hall Master Mu and Star Plucking Hall's Dugaling are both under second younger brother. Eldest young Sir Chin winked at Arbor in amusement. Of course, he wouldn't tell her too much. Flying Paradise was originally under father's control, and it was only in recent years that he successively transferred some of its power to second younger brother. Arbor's fingertips curled up slightly, but his expression didn't change at all. So in her previous life, the reason why young Sir Omega Kotoku would appear in that ghastly hell and carry her out of the confined little laboratory was because it wasn't a coincidence at all. Fan Chioha was Mu Qingya's subordinate, and Mu Qingya was this second young Sir's subordinate. Young Sir Omega Kotoku was originally the mastermind behind Flying Paradise, so it was very normal for him to be able to freely enter and leave the dungeon. To think that she was so grateful to him, worshipping him, and revering him like an idiot back then. Sure enough, everything was a huge scam. Jojo, do you have any other questions? Eldest young Sir sat across from her like an obedient child, quietly waiting for the little girl to continue asking questions. It was as though he would definitely tell her everything he knew without holding back anything as long as the little stoic wanted to know. Even now, this person was still putting on airs in front of her. Arbor stared fixedly at him like this, attentively observing this hypocrite who was putting on a sanctimonious front. Just as she was about to speak, she heard him sigh and say, "Regardless of whether you believe me or not. Jojo, but I really never thought of harming you in the slightest." Then what about Joe City? During the finals of the Heavenly Prime ranking, which by is Hidden Moon Hall's Old 7 subordinate. When he jumped onto the stage, Old Second and I were extremely surprised, said eldest young Sir Chin. Eldest young Master Chin said, "Do you still remember how you broke Old Seven's arm in front of everyone in Phoenix Grove? Old Seven harbored a grudge and sent by to deal with you. We only found out about this when it happened." I want to see Omega Kotoku, Arbor said coldly. Eldest young master gazed deeply at her and nodded. All right, then eat some more. I'll call him over. How could Arbor continue eating? After the little stoic icily watched eldest young Serchin leave, she flicked her sleeve and swept all the cups, plates on the table to the floor. The more he knew the truth, the more depressed he felt. Fan Qiuha, Lu Yizhi, Geng Pengqing and Mu Qingya, these people who had made her suffer in her previous life were all second young master's people. This second young master actually had the face to tell her that he had never thought of harming her? What a joke! The Omega Kotoku walked over, stepping on the debris on the floor. He looked down at the mess of cups and plates and said coldly, Are they all dead? The floor is so dirty, don't you know how to clean it up? The two maidservants guarding outside the door crawled in, trembling, and quickly cleaned up the messy floor. Don't you have anything to say to me? What do you want to know? As long as you ask, I'll tell you. Second young master gazed at her darkly. You said that you had never thought of harming me. But in reality, you've caused me so much pain. Arbor abruptly stood up, her severe eyes coldly watching Omega Kotoku. You have memories of your previous life, right? Second young master's breathing tightened. I don't know why you have this memory, but I advise you to quickly forget it. Chapter 49-20. Don't have any illusions about me. Arbor gazed at him coldly and enunciated each word clearly. We've long been finished. Xiao Qiao. Don't call me that. Arbor shouted at him sternly. He hid one hand behind his back and stealthily condensed water into ice, forming a sharp icicle. Your hypocritical appearance is truly disgusting to the extreme. Arbor revealed a mocking smile at him. When you had that bitch Luigi lead people to attack my holy water sect, did you ever think that your words wouldn't harm me in the slightest? Your so-called not harm me in the slightest is treating me like this. That's not it. Young Master Omega Kotoku anxiously stepped forward and defended himself with bloodshot eyes. You clearly know that I didn't instigate it, yet you insist on pinning all of this on me? You clearly know the reason in your heart. I don't know. Arbor shouted furiously in an agitated manner. You know. Young Master Omega Kotoku anxiously shouted. It was Lu Yizhi himself who acted out of selfishness to obtain the sacred water and joined forces with the 6 prefectures to encircle and annihilate your holy water sect. Did you know that I was also very shocked when I received the news? Even if I wanted to move against the 3 sects and 5 factions at that time, I wouldn't have disregarded your feelings. The second young master grabbed her wrist and forcefully shook her hand. Otherwise, why do you think I didn't interfere when that fellow Emolien wantonly encircled and captured the Shuntian prefecture's people on Sikong planet? Because this Lu Yizhi was dishonest. He slaughtered the holy water sect out of selfishness. He deserved to die. At that time, the second young master hid in the shadows and coldly watched as this Mr. Lu was chased and beaten like a dog by Emolien. He also watched as he was ultimately refined into a mechanical puppet by Emolien. It was a tragic sight beyond compare. That was all because he, Lu Yizhi, brought it upon himself. Did he think that he wouldn't be subject to military orders because he was overseas? Did he think that he could disobey orders and do whatever he wanted because he went to the lower star domain? Facts had proven that those who did not obey the organization would sooner or later be killed by their enemies outside the organization. At that time, Omega Kotoku's forces in the lower star domain had also suffered a great blow because of Lu Yizhi. If it weren't for the Rakshasa Ghost sect, he might have even lacked manpower to handle matters. Shut up. Arbor shook off his hand and took a step back. He grabbed the small round table behind him with his right hand and tried to calm himself down. With Lu Yizhi's status, he couldn't have come into contact with me at that time. Lu Yizhi only interacted with my foster father in the lower star domain because he coveted the pills my foster father gave him. Lu Yizhi wants the sacred water. Even if he obtains it, given his selfishness, it's impossible for him to tell me. The person he sent was one of my foster father's men. That's why you picked up an iron plate from the Qin estate. No matter what you say, you can't deny one fact. Lu Yizhi is your man, it's you. It's always been you. You made me suffer so much. Arbor raised his hand to his chest and lowered his head slightly. Do you know who captured and locked me up in my previous life? Who ordered them to study my inner world and my dantian? It's you. It's your subordinate Mu Qingya and your subordinate Fan Chioha. It's you, it's all you. Xiao Qiao. Young Master Omega Kotoku panicked and rushed forward with a big stride. In the blink of an eye, Qiao Mu raised her right hand, and a sharp icicle that had formed abruptly stabbed into the second young master's chest with the speed of lightning and rolling thunder. Chapter 49-21. Young Master. Several hidden guards abruptly jumped in from outside, each of them furiously unsheathing the swords at their waists. Withdraw! Young Master Omega Kotoku berated them, and he couldn't stop a mouthful of blood from flowing out of his mouth. He tightly gripped her right hand that was covered in blood. When he met the little stoic's cold and heartless beautiful eyes, his heart trembled slightly. Whether you believe it or not, I never thought of harming you. I've already heard enough of this. Arbor gazed at him coldly, his gaze revealing a ruthless contempt for the heavens. The little stoic continued expressionlessly as she twirled the icicle in her hand. If I told you to die, would you be willing to die? Bam. The Raksha princess kicked the door open and immediately let out a wolf's howl. You're all dead people. Why aren't you saving Master? The hidden guards all felt extremely aggrieved. They wanted to go forward, but their master's sharp gaze stopped all of them from going forward. Young Master Omega Kotoku berated in a low voice, his hand tightly gripping the little stoic's dripping blood. The young lady following behind the Raksha princess paled slightly, and she quickly walked up to salute. Young Master, your injuries are so serious. If you don't treat him, scram. Young Master Omega Kotoku shouted and swept his sleeve, sending that young lady and the Raksha princess flying out together. Bam. Subsequently, the cabin door was slammed shut. The Raksha princess and that young lady, as well as the hidden guards, were all blocked outside. The Raksha princess sighed. When she turned around and saw that young lady's teary eyes, she sighed and said, Xiao Ran ah. She patted Zhao Qiran's shoulder. I can understand your feelings. Sigh. This is the heart of begging but not being able to obtain. The Raksha princess sighed ruefully. That little foe of mine. When the Raksha princess thought of the person she begged but couldn't obtain, she couldn't help but sigh again. The hidden guards couldn't help but shudder in unison. Princess Lusha, how can you be compared to the 20-year-old Miss Ran? When you were chasing after that young and handsome cult master Ding, we only felt that it was an eyesore. When it comes to love, not everything will go according to one's wishes. Princess Luosha comforted Zhao Qiran with the tone of an experienced person. She patted her shoulder and said, All right, go invite Alchemist Ouyang over. It seems like our young master needs emergency treatment. Pipa. All the disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect looked down with cold sweat on their foreheads. None of them dared to look directly at the fat man who was being whipped while tied to the mast. With every lash, the fat on the fatty's body couldn't help but tremble a little. At this moment, the benevolent smile on his large face was no longer present. Instead, it was twisted and filled with resentment. Eldest young Sir Qin was sitting across from him, his long legs folded as he leisurely sipped from a cup of hot tea. His gaze inadvertently swept over the fat man, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a mocking smile. Do you still think you're in the right? Everything this subordinate has done is all for you, young sir. But the heavy lash caused his voice to abruptly stop. It was so painful that his face couldn't help but twitch violently. Qin Xian threw the teacup heavily at the old steward's feet and scoffed. For this young sir? Did this young sir tell you to use the people in the camp as experimental subjects? Chapter 49-22. Did this young master tell you to give the Fong siblings the mutated medicinal fluid? Not being disciplined and acting on his own accord. He must have done this under his father Qin Hong's orders. The little stoic's guess was correct. Luo Qizhong did it on purpose. He purposely experimented in the camp and left behind clues that others could see through. He purposely exposed his and second brother's true identities in front of the little stoic. This person was disloyal to him, so it looked like he couldn't be left alive. Old steward Luo shuddered, sensing that the eldest young master wanted to kill him. He hastily cried out, eldest young master, this subordinate didn't betray you. This subordinate truly did this for you, young master. Young master, didn't you notice? You and second young master have repeatedly made exceptions for this stoic. If this continues, this stoic will definitely spoil my heavenly fortune. Besides, she formed the allied army of the 3 provinces to deal with us. How can this subordinate tolerate this kind of person continuing to exist? He could only hate that the Fong siblings were truly useless. None of them could deal with the stoic. On the night that the Fong family's little brother mutated, you were the one who hid outside Xiao Qiao's tent and ambushed her with poison, eldest young Master Qin asked faintly as he looked at him icily. Luo Qizhong stiffened his neck and nodded stiffly. Precisely. He hated that stoic. She was so guarded and didn't follow the rules at all. If she had discovered the cup was poisoned that night and chased after him, he would have had a way to secretly deal with this damn girl. Unfortunately, she hid in the camp and used formations and concealed weapons to deal with him. As a result, she alarmed the 2 young masters. You poisoned her? Eldest young Master Qin sneered. Don't you know that she's a great pill alchemist? This was a little oddball who could challenge those above her level and kill a god-rank pill alchemist. The ignorant are fearless, and the ignorant are ill-informed. The eldest young master glanced coldly at Luo Qizhong. A hidden guard immediately leaped forward and raised his hand to slit old steward Luo's neck. Stop! A shout cut through the air. An air transportation spirit tools cabin opened, and the Qin estate's patriarch, Qin Hong, led several dozen subordinates and jumped down from the cabin and landed on the ship's deck. Qin Xian, you're really becoming more and more outrageous. Qin Yi coldly reprimanded. For that woman, you actually dared to kill your old steward who had followed you for more than 10 years? Eldest young Sir Qin gazed coldly at his father. Since father has taken a liking to this person, then bring him back. There's no need for him to continue to be a spy by my side and ruin the relationship between you and me. I don't need anyone who isn't loyal to me. Eldest young master. Disappointment appeared on Luo Qizhong's chubby face. The eldest young master was still too soft-hearted and too lenient towards that damn little stoic. No wonder the patriarch was extremely vigilant towards that stoic face and secretly ordered him to find an opportunity to kill that stoic face. Now, it seemed that this stoic face's influence on the 2 young masters was too great, and the family head couldn't afford to be vigilant. Qin Hong stared at Qin Xian for a long time, his eyes flashing slightly. He pretended to sigh helplessly and said, You and Exenth have grown up. All these years, father has not been able to teach you well. Forget it. You can do whatever you want, but you mustn't ruin ancestors' grand plans. Otherwise, even father won't be able to save you too. Chapter 49-23. Old Luo, since eldest young master doesn't need you here anymore, you can stay by my side for the time being, family head Qin said indifferently. It just so happened that his right-hand man, Age, had been killed in Yen City by that ruthless little emperor of Tsang province. He truly lacked capable people by his side, so he could trust old Luo's ability. Luo Qizhong had escaped death, so he naturally wouldn't have any objections to family head Qin. After he was untied, he hastily knelt down and kowtowed to eldest young master before silently retreating to stand behind family head Qin. He lowered his head and looked submissive. Qin Xian didn't say anything, but his gaze swept coldly over Luo Qizhong. Eldest young master was helpless when his father insisted on protecting steward Luo. At present, it wasn't to the extent of falling out with his father over such a trivial matter. Where's Exa? Qin Hong looked around and asked with a smile. I heard that you captured many elite disciples from various patrician families this time. Well done. Qin Xian stood with his hands behind his back and glanced at the unmoving eldest young Master Qin. Father will go with you to Wangchuan clan's territory on this trip. Eldest young Master Qin glanced at him indifferently. Father can resolve the matter of Wangchuan however you want. But please don't interfere with my matters in the future. Hearing his eldest son's insinuations, Qin Hong's eyes flared with anger, and he suddenly raised his voice. Speak clearly. For example, sending people to deal with facial paralysis by every possible means. You've assassinated and poisoned them. Father, please stop. Qin Hong flew into a rage and pointed at his son. That's right. It was Father who ordered Steward Luo to eliminate that Xiao woman. Her existence will only cause you brothers' minds to wander. This woman can't accomplish anything but spoils everything. She absolutely can't be left alive. Qin Xian sneered. Then why don't you try, Father? Will the people you sent die first, or will Father be the unlucky one? Qin Xian was so angry that his face flushed red. He pointed at his eldest son and couldn't say a word for a while. Since Father has already handed over most of your matters to second younger brother, then you should enjoy your remaining years. Don't spend all your time doing these nonsensical and messy things. That's all I have to say. Father, please go ahead. After Qin Xian finished speaking, he swaggered off with his men, leaving his old father on the deck to stomp his feet, his face livid with anger. Unfilial son. Unfilial son. Qin Hong's eyes were filled with anger. It was as if their father wanted to harm them. Wasn't he doing this for their own good? What good could come out of leaving that stoic face here? This damned stoic face was truly the reincarnation of a star of misfortune. Every day she would harm his two outstanding sons. She deserved to die. When family head Qin thought of this, a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. Second young master, don't come into contact with water for the next few days. The wound is still quite deep. As Yangsu bandaged second young master Qin's wounds, she secretly peeked at the expressionless Lord Xiao Xiao sitting on the side. Duge Ling's mouth twitched as he thought to himself, this little girl's bad habit of hitting people the moment she gets angry is really because she's been spoiled. Look at how he stabbed their family's second young master. The heavens took pity on him. Knock knock knock. Princess Luosha submissively pushed open the door and walked in. She bowed and said, Second young master, family head has arrived. He invites you over. Isn't eldest brother here? Second young master said impatiently. Chapter 49-24. A faint sorrow rippled in the Raksha princess's heart, and she hastily covered her small face with a silk handkerchief. She sobbed. Eldest young sir seemed to have directly contradicted family head again and parted on bad terms with family head. Second young sir, you should hurry over and take a look. The Omega Kotoku young sir was stunned by the Raksha princess's pretentious behavior. He couldn't bear to look at her and stood up, flinging his sleeves as he walked outside. Second young sir. Zhao Qiran stood outside the door and hastily called out when she saw the second young sir come out. Her beautiful eyes contained some worry as she looked at the second young sir's clothes. The second young sir had changed his clothes, but the way the blood vessels were surging just now it was evident that his injuries weren't light. You're not allowed to mention this young sir's injuries to outsiders. Everyone in the room nodded in agreement. The Raksha princess also cupped her hands in salute. The Omega Kotoku young sir coldly said, especially, don't talk nonsense in front of father. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The second young sir's implied warning couldn't be any more obvious. That was, they weren't allowed to reveal that the little stoic had stabbed him today. The Raksha princess pursed her lips and turned to glance at the stoic young lady sitting at the table like a jade sculpture. Don't you have anything to say? The Raksha princess rolled up her sleeves and glared at Arbor while blowing her eyebrows. She threatened, don't think we can let you off just like this. You injured second young sir. Even if second young sir doesn't pursue the matter, we have plenty of people who will. Be careful. The Raksha princess warned viciously as she glared at Arbor with her red eyebrows and green eyes. A sharp glint was concealed in her eyes. Arbor glanced at this woman with exquisite makeup that exposed half of her fragrant shoulders. He only felt that her revealing clothes could only be described as coquettish. When she stared at Jojo, it made Jojo feel very uncomfortable. Also, the name Raksha princess sounded especially familiar, but he just couldn't recall where he had seen it before. What are you doing? Looking at her expressionless face, the Raksha princess couldn't help but be infuriated. Are you trying to say that you don't remember me? When we were in the Mystic Beast Forest, I didn't provoke you at all. But in order to save Sikong Fuling, that slut, you ruthlessly beat me up. Yes, I did capture you for revenge, but that was because you made the first move. What Mystic Beast Forest? Xiao Mu's pitch-black eyes contained a cold lightning glint as she stared deeply at her. Speak clearly. Ding Yun said that he had met her in the Mystic Beast Forest. Sikong Fuling also said that she would meet her in the Mystic Beast Forest. Now, this Raksha princess actually said that she had saved Sikong Fuling in the Mystic Beast Forest? What the hell was this? Stop pretending. You were blind at the time, but at least your brain was still working, and your memory was still there, right? Arbor expressionlessly looked at the Raksha princess, who was spouting nonsense in front of him. Suddenly, he swung his hand and heavily slapped the Raksha princess's face. This slap sent this old woman flying. She crashed into the opposite cabinet with a loud crash and fell to the ground with a flop. Dugu Ling, who had been watching the show from the side, couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he saw this scene. He was just about to remind the Raksha princess that this fierce lady's temper wasn't very good. She was like a firecracker that could explode at any time. You need to be careful with your words. Chapter 49-25. She hadn't even spoken 3 sentences yet. I remember now. Arbor's eyes were like cold lightning as he faintly watched the Raksha princess, who was rolling on the ground and vomiting half a mouthful of blood. Before the Raksha princess could finish muttering, fuck, in her mind, she met the little stoic's chilly eyes brimming with boundless killing intent. Her entire body abruptly turned cold, and she couldn't resist shuddering. This fellow recalled how she captured her in the Mystic Beast Forest and wanted to kill her. But didn't her Ding Lang run over at that time? In order to save this fierce miss, he even beat and scolded her as if his heart had been gouged out. Ouyang Su hastily stood up with his medicine chest, straightened out his clothes, and retreated to Dugu Ling's side. This alchemist Ouyang hugged his medicine chest and looked at the fierce miss with a murderous expression, then at the Raksha princess sprawled on the ground with blood dripping from the corner of her mouth. He was conflicted on whether he should treat his colleague first. The Raksha princess looked a bit wretched right now, so it was very difficult for him to pretend not to see her. Arbor pulled out a jade green vine whip and coldly gazed at the Raksha princess. You're that sister of coitus sex granny witch on Sikong planet who has the same hobby. The sect master of Raksha ghost sect who likes to search for men everywhere and use them as vessels to suck their essence and mystic energy. Dugu Ling's mouth twitched. He looked at the Raksha princess's dumbfounded expression and felt that this matter should be rather hilarious. The matter the little stoic remembered definitely wasn't the same as the Mystic Beast Forest matter the Raksha princess was talking about. It's not. The Raksha princess looked at Arbor in bewilderment. I'm not talking to you. Why are you talking about coitus sect? Who's sisters with that old hag from coitus sect? The Raksha princess couldn't help but panic. What kind of freaking sisterly relationship could she have with that ugly old hag from coitus sect? Not only was this stoic face blind, she was also an idiot. Why was she spouting nonsense here? She really wanted to slap this stoic face to death. I'm talking to you about the Mystic Beast Forest matter right now. The Raksha princess raised her voice an octave as she shouted harshly. Arbor couldn't be bothered with the Raksha princess and continued, no wonder I felt that your name was so familiar. So it's you. Bailon City, you sent people to capture Jojo's lotus. Do you still want to force her to marry you? The Raksha princess stared at the young crown princess in confusion. What the hell? Who wants to marry Jojo's lotus? The Raksha princess knew that she had walked through thousands of bushes without a single leaf touching her body. But at least she was a person with moral integrity. She wouldn't do anything like forcing someone to marry her. When the little stoic said this, her expression didn't change at all. Other than her small mouth smacking as she spoke, her other eyes and eyebrows didn't move at all. No. What do you mean? You still want to deny it? Arbor suddenly stretched out his little hand and showed her one of the rings. Do you recognize it? Defensive Thunder Barrier. Princess Luosha's broken string was reconnected. You remember now, don't you? Arbor looked at her expressionlessly with a cold face. The Raksha princess almost vomited blood in anger. I say, can you not talk to yourself like that? I'm talking to you about the Mystic Beast Forest matter, so why are you freaking talking to me about Balon City? The Raksha princess clapped her hands in anger. How freaking long ago was Balon City? Can you freaking not talk nonsense like this? Why did she feel that talking to this stoic face was so tiring? Chapter 49-26. However, the little stoic's expression was serious. How long has it been since this matter was exposed? You sensual old thing, you want to forcefully seize Jojo's lotus to use as a vessel. Go to hell. The green vine in the little fellow's hand faintly emitted a flickering light. The Raksha princess felt like she was going to explode from anger. What was wrong with this guy? Could he still speak properly with her? It turns out that the idiot I sent to Balon City that time was killed by you. You freaking, originally, she simply wasn't aware of this matter. When she lost a top-notch spiritual weapon like the defensive Thunder Barrier, she was so angry that her chest felt stifled and she couldn't eat. Later, she sent the Snake Beauty, that unreliable fellow, to Balon City to search for the spiritual weapon, but she never said anything after that. She didn't expect it. She really didn't expect it. She didn't expect this spiritual weapon to be taken away by this bandit lady in front of her. And now, she actually wanted to settle accounts with her because of this Balon City lousy matter? If she could curse at this moment, the Raksha princess could curse all 18 generations of Jojo's ancestors as retarded fools. How did they give birth to such an oddball? Without another word, Arbor swung his vine whip at her face. Dugu Ling speechlessly shifted his position. Jojo, I feel that the Raksha princess doesn't want to talk to you about this matter. Can't you just let her finish her sentence? As a spectator, he felt anxious for the Raksha princess. She clearly didn't want to talk to the Stoic about Balon City's matter, but she ended up being scolded by the Stoic and inexplicably fell into a ditch. The Raksha princess rolled back and forth on the ground, dodging Arbor's fierce vine whip attacks. At this moment, she didn't know whether she should say 10,000 fuck-s in her mind. What are you doing? An angry shout came from outside the door. The Raksha princess was disheveled and filthy, and her hair was disheveled as she scrambled towards the person outside the door. Family head, save me. Seeing her sorry figure, Qin Hong couldn't help but be infuriated, and he kicked her out. Useless thing, you were actually beaten to this state by a criminal? His sharp old eyes stared at Dugu Ling, who was leisurely leaning on the side with his arms crossed. He scolded angrily, Hall Master Dugu, what is the meaning of this? If a criminal refuses to be disciplined, doesn't your star-plucking hall know how to tie him up and put special shackles on him? Dugu Ling smiled and said, Family head, second young master didn't give the order, and Ling doesn't dare to go against master's wishes. Bastard! Qin Hong roared with a cold face. His sharp eyes stared at Arbor, as if a fire dragon was about to emerge from his eyes. Arbor, you're too presumptuous. How dare you act so presumptuously after boarding our Tianyun ship? Do you really think we can't do anything to you? Arbor glanced at Qin Hong coldly. Why don't you try? Qin Hong didn't expect her to be so arrogant and daring to contradict him in front of so many subordinates, slapping his face in public. His old face immediately contorted in anger, and he waved his hand and shouted angrily, Tie her up. Dugu Ling's eyes flickered, and he spun around to block Arbor with a grin. He flicked his sleeves and said, Family head, this person was left behind by our star-plucking hall. Second young master hasn't given the order, so family head shouldn't casually comment. Qin Yi raised her hand, and a powerful airflow pressed against Dugu Ling. Dugu Ling's body swayed from the impact, and he pulled the little stoic back several steps. Qin Yi wanted to attack again in her fury, but second young master suddenly appeared and called coldly, Father. Chapter 49-27. Qin Hong was furious. He turned to glare at the young master of Omega Kotoku. What? You still want to stop your father at a time like this? Did you not see the true face of this woman? Audacious, arrogant, and hateful. Father, are you trying to test where your son's bottom line is? Qin Hong's old face couldn't help but twitch. He was so angry that his mouth was crooked. Who the hell wants to test your bottom line? He really understood this kid's temper. If he really wanted to make things difficult for Arbor here today, this kid would definitely disregard the father-son relationship and embarrass his old father in front of everyone. If he couldn't even get out of this embarrassing situation, it would be even more unsightly. 1, 2, 3, all of them were unfilial sons. Qin Hong tried hard to suppress his belly full of anger. Fine. Next thing, you've grown up. You won't listen to your father anymore. But one day, you'll understand that everything your father does is for your own good. Qin Exen coldly glanced at her father and watched him leave in a huff. Only then did she turn to look at the expressionless Sir Jojo. In the end, she didn't say a word and led people to carry the bruised and swollen Princess Luosha out. Sir Jojo angrily slammed a table and scolded, "Preposterous." She wanted to teach the Princess Luosha a lesson, but so many people inexplicably rushed in. That old man Qin Hong treated her with disdain. She didn't know what was wrong with that old thing. Father. Duke Ziqin Qigong closed the door and quietly walked in. He respectfully bowed to Qin Hong. What do you think about the facial paralysis? Qin Chang lowered his head slightly and rolled his eyes. I think the crown princess can't be left alive. But big brother and second brother seem to, these two good-for-nothings. Qin Hong scolded angrily and said coldly, tomorrow I will transfer the two of them away. You know what to do. Qin Chang's eyes flashed with a hint of smugness, but he didn't show it on his face. He raised his head to look at family head Qin, his eyes carrying traces of hesitation. What other difficulties do you have? Wouldn't that be too obvious? Qin Chang put on a fearful expression. If big brother and second brother come back and find out about this, then what are you afraid of? Family head Qin shouted coldly, you're their younger brother. Could it be that those two unfilial sons would dare to make an example out of you? Qin Chang curled his lips and thought disdainfully in his heart, that's not necessarily true. Do you think they are good people? Tomorrow I will bring them to the Forgotten River clan to meet that young and talented clan head Ding. Clan head Qin sneered and said, make good use of this opportunity. As long as you can get rid of this facial paralysis for our Tian Yun, we'll give you a special merit. But, family head Qin said impatiently, what other concerns do you have? Tell me everything. You can't achieve great things if you're too wishy-washy. This child, old seventh, was far from being as bold and decisive as old first and second. Why don't father send Dugaling and the others away as well? Family head Qin hurriedly shook his head. That would be too obvious. No way. It's just Dugaling. Can't you deal with him? Qin Chang couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Father, Dugaling has already reached the peak of the venerated immortal realm. I have no chance of winning against him. Family head Qin cursed inwardly for being useless and said coldly, enough. Chapter 49-28. Father will think of a way to transfer him away as well. In short, we can only succeed in this matter. Failure is not an option. Yes. Qin Chang lowered his head, a smug glint flashing through his eyes. This damned stoic face, I'll teach you a lesson this time. Father, you're not plotting something against Xiao Qiao, are you? After hearing family head Qin's words, the second young master stared coldly at Qin Hong, not giving his father any face at all. Qin Chui was fuming with rage. She gritted her teeth and said, why must I do this? I have plenty of ways to deal with that stoic face. Why must I do it so obviously in front of you? Qin Exine glanced at her father in confusion, thinking that her father's words made sense. Qin Hong eased his breath and continued persuading, I'm bringing you along this time mainly to meet that family head Ding. After all, he just took over the entire Wangchuan clan and has many troubles. Since we've already discussed cooperation, shouldn't we go and express our sincerity this way, we can also strengthen our alliance. Since father is so sincere. Qin Exen nodded and said, all right then, I'll go with father and let eldest brother stay here. Qin Hong felt a breath stuck in his throat, unable to move up or down. This was his good son, guarding against a thief. Eldest young Master Qin didn't say anything. He waved the folding fan in his hand and revealed a faint, carefree smile. All right. Qin Shui's face twitched with a fake smile. Then we'll leave in the afternoon. Young Master Omega Kotoku didn't have any objections. Indeed, he really wanted to go to the Wangchuan clan to see that vicious and merciless young Master Ding. After all, some cooperation matters were better discussed face to face. On the other side, Qin Chang looked at his father in bewilderment. What did his unreliable father mean by giving him a look that said, do as you see fit, before he left? Didn't they agree to transfer eldest brother and second brother away? What was going on now? He transferred second brother and Duguling away and left eldest brother behind. Did he want him to court his own death or court his own death? Was there anyone who did things like that? They agreed to lure the tiger away from the mountain, but in the end, they lured a tiger away. The afternoon sun was just right. Eldest young master yawned and muttered, I'm going to take a nap on the deck. Little 5. Eldest brother. Fifth young Master Qin hastily walked to his side, looking like he was all ears. Pay attention to the little stoic situation. Okay, big brother. Seventh young Master Qin gnashed his teeth in anger. Boss clearly doesn't trust me. His old father was really unreliable. He clearly knew that his boss was not someone to be trifled with, yet he still left him here and gave him a motherfucking look, telling him to act according to the situation. See his sister's machine, do his father's business. Qin Chang couldn't help but curse secretly. He lowered his head and looked at the medicine bag hidden in his palm. A trace of viciousness flashed through his eyes. A moment later, he sneaked to the outside of the little stoic's cabin and hung upside down by the window. He took out a tiny bamboo tube from his sleeve. Before he could even blow a mouthful of poisonous smoke into his mouth, he felt a heavy hammer smashing into his face, landing heavily on the bridge of his nose. He could even hear his nose break with a crack, and his entire body slid down from the window, landing in the sea with a splash. Eldest young Master Qin had ordered people to bring over a brocade couch, and he was currently lying leisurely on the deck. Chapter 49-29. Suddenly, he heard the sound of water splashing. Startled, he hurriedly sat up and asked, what happened? Several boatmen hastily dashed to the railing and looked down before exclaiming with an odd expression, Seventh young master. Seventh young master fell into the water. Quickly bring a net over and pull seventh young master up. Seventh young Master Qin naturally didn't need something as embarrassing as a net. He took a deep breath and jumped out of the water with a splash, landing lightly on the ship's railing and landing with a leap. Eldest young Master Qin leisurely turned to glance at him and feigned confusion as he asked, The weather is so cold. Seventh brother, why did you go into the water? Qin Chang knew that he had been tricked by that stoic face again. With a dark face, he clutched his half-broken nose and ran back to his cabin while groaning. Eldest young Master Qin chuckled and shook his head. Young master, young master, young master. Ling Gu hastily ran over while holding a light purple crystal ball in both hands. The spirit testing ball reacted again. There's a ship following us 70 nautical miles away, and it looks like the target is here. This ship has been following us since yesterday. It looks like the target is indeed our ship. The fatty brandished his purple gold hammer and harumphed. Young master, how about we let this fatty go meet them first? Eldest young Master Qin stared intently at that crystal ball before his gaze landed on that ship. The scene was somewhat indistinct, and he could only vaguely make out several slender and elegant figures standing at the ship's bow. Eldest young Master Qin stared intently for a good while before his lips curled into a smile. They came rather quickly. Young master, could it be that you know who they are? Ling Gu asked curiously. Fatty. Present. Come with this young master to meet them. A faint light flashed through the corners of eldest young Master Qin's eyes, and he turned to instruct fifth young Master Qin. Xiao, order people to speed up and change the course. Go to the nearby Great Jubilee City and wait for us. No, we're not returning to the headquarters, Ling Go called out. Fifth young Master Qin didn't say anything else and nodded. Got it, big brother. Be careful. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Eldest young Sir Qin nodded with a grin. With a leap, he led Fatty and the others towards the pursuing ship at top speed. Ling Gu asked blankly, Young Master, does eldest young Master know the people on that ship? You know him too. The Zither cultivator frowned and said in a low voice. I know him too? Ling Gu looked curious as she scratched her ears and cheeks and asked, Young Master, I'm very stupid. I didn't manage to guess who it was. Song Prefecture's monarch is here. Arbor was fiddling with a mechanical arm, its small hand supporting its chin, occasionally glancing at the window. Why couldn't he be sent flying with a single punch? It was so boring. She had punched him. Logically speaking, shouldn't he have fought back after all the setbacks? She had already prepared all kinds of poisons and was just waiting for someone to come in. Arbor touched the basin of powder on the table. She had placed the powdery items in the same basin, but they were clearly separated. There were 5 colors inside, and each color of powder stayed in its own territory obediently, not mixing with the powders of other colors. The 5 colors bloomed perfectly. What a pity, the little fellow muttered quietly. Chapter 49:30. She had researched and developed her 5 yang intense poison for so long, but she still hadn't found a suitable person to use it on. It had to be a cultivator with a strong body. Otherwise, ordinary small cultivators in the profound realm and spirit realm would probably die if they inhaled just a little bit of the poison powder. What was the point of a trial then? Why didn't that brain-damaged 7th young Master Qin come? That blow just now had at most broken his nose. With his personality, shouldn't he have quickly jumped out to retaliate against Sir Jojo? Why was there no sound? Outrageous, you can't even persevere in a fight. It'll be hard for you to achieve anything great in this lifetime. Bam! After a huge quake, Arbor's cabin door suddenly collapsed from the outside to the inside, smashing heavily onto the ground. 7th young Master Qin, who had entered against the light, had a wicked smile on his face. He looked at her smugly and said, Now no one can save you? If you kneel down and beg for this young master's forgiveness. Arbor's eyes brightened, and she picked up the basin on the table without a second word. With a splash, she scattered half of the basin's powder onto 7th young Master Qin. Midway, she thought that this half basin's powder might be too effective. This 7th young Master Qin might die in less than 3 seconds after being covered in this powder. Forget it, hurry up and catch some more. The little girl hastily hopped over and pressed the basin on the table with both hands. She flew over and repeatedly swept her sleeves, collecting more than half of the obedient powder. Even so, the dumbfounded 7th young Master Qin was still splashed in the face by the 5-colored powder. He raised his hand to wipe his face and roared at Arbor in exasperation, Are you freaking sick? What kind of lousy thing did you throw at me? 7th young Sir Qin rubbed his nose as he glared furiously at Xiao Mu. His originally handsome face was now severely contorted. Little bitch, no one can save you today. 7th younger brother, what are you doing? 5th young master rushed over in exasperation with his men. 7th young Master Qin humphed coldly and turned to sweep a disdainful glance at the 5th young master. Now that eldest brother and second brother aren't here, do you think you alone can stop this young master? A piece of trash like you dares to clamor in front of this young master. I really don't know where you got the guts. Qin Chong turned around and sneered at Arbor. Are you scared now? Arbor was stunned for a moment before he received an important message. Kodo and Omega Kotoku were not on the ship. That's really great. Men, tie her up with the spirit-binding rope. This young master is going to properly teach this bitch a lesson today. 7th young Master Qin extended 4 fingers forward with a sinister smile on his face. She's clearly a criminal, yet she's always acting like a pampered missy. Who spoiled her? Several extremely vicious subordinates of 7th Qin crept in from the entrance with several spirit-binding ropes in their hands. Many pairs of eyes stared at Arbor in front of them, trying to use the spirit-binding rope in their hands to restrain her. 7th young Master Qin couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed when he saw their furtive appearances. He roared at his subordinates, "What are you afraid of? There are so many of you, yet you're worried you can't deal with a small spiritual realm? Hurry up and go." He strode forward and was just about to punch Arbor's head with his fist when someone forcefully grabbed his arm midway. 7th Qin was startled and turned to look at 5th young Master Qin like he was looking at a ghost. Chapter 49-31. Qin Chang dazedly lowered his head and glanced at the 5th young master's hand that was twisting his arm. He widened his eyes in astonishment, and an egg could be stuffed into his mouth. Old 5th's grip was so strong that he clearly didn't look like a weakling. All right? What was going on? Since when did Old 5th's hands that played the zither and plum blossom change so much? He truly was a cunning guy. He had actually been kept in the dark the entire time and didn't know anything at all. 7th brother, do you know the consequences of today's matter? What consequences? I'm eliminating this woman for the organization and for the sake of the heavenly fortune. Qin Chang hooted. Don't you know? This woman has united the strongest factions in the upper 3 provinces and conspired against us in every possible way. You're stopping me from killing her? You're betraying our heavenly fortune. Qin Chang hooted loudly. Think about it, if this matter is exposed to the ancestor, how will the ancestor punish you? At that time, not to mention you, even eldest brother and second brother might be implicated by this matter. The more Qin Chang spoke, the more he felt that he was extremely reasonable. Wasn't that so? It was like this to begin with. He didn't choose to attack the little stoic because of personal grudges. He was completely doing this for the organization's great cause. For the sake of the entire heavenly fortune's future. Qin Chang glanced disdainfully at the 5th young master and snorted. Why aren't you moving aside? Do you think you can stop me with your skills? Actually, he was truly curious on the inside. Why did Old 5th have this strength? He carefully sized up Old 5th and couldn't detect any spiritual energy fluctuations on him at all. He was dying of curiosity, but now didn't seem to be a good time to ask. Moreover, his relationship with Old 5th had never been good. Even if he asked, the other party might not be willing to tell him the whole story. Move aside. With this in mind, Qin Chang didn't dwell on anything else and forcefully shook off 5th young Master Qin's palm. Ah, 7th young master. A servant on the side shrieked. This person's cry was short and unpleasant, as though someone was strangling him. Qin Chang was very impatient with being interrupted, and he shouted angrily, "Speak later if you have anything to say." Didn't he see that he was currently disciplining 5th Qin, that ignorant fellow? HM? What kind of expression was that? Why was 5th Qin glaring at her with such astonishment? Just as this thought surfaced in the 7th young Master Qin's mind, he saw the 2 servants at the side stumble back a few steps and repeatedly exclaim while pointing at him, "7th young master, your head." Qin Chi's heart inexplicably thumped, and he hurriedly raised his hand to touch his head, muttering, "What's wrong with my head?" The burning sensation on his hand gave Qin Chang a fright. He quickly turned around and happened to see a mirror in the cabin. In the mirror, his head was completely enveloped by a layer of crimson flames, making him look extremely strange. Fire! Fire! 7th Qin repeatedly stomped his feet. He pointed at his own head and said to the dumbstruck servant beside him, "What are you standing there for? Quick! Quick!" The servant came back to his senses and immediately nodded in understanding. She pressed her hands together and hurriedly released a thin stream of water, helping 7th young Master Qin's burning head. She poured the spiritual water on 7th young master's head and helped him wash it. However, no matter how that servant poured the spiritual water, 7th young master's head was still enveloped by that ball of fire. From his neck up, 7th young master's large head was completely enveloped in a fireball. Chapter 49-32. He even discovered to his horror that his hair was emitting faint beep 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 sounds. Inch by inch, his hair was being burned to ashes by an unknown raging flame. Fire, fire, fire. That? Can't. The servant staggered in fright and fell to the ground, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. His teeth chattered, and he even stuttered a bit when speaking. Old Fifth. Save me. Seventh young master was truly panicking this time. He finally remembered his fifth brother and promptly pleaded bitterly, Fifth brother. Save me. Fifth young master glanced coldly at Qin Chang. He truly didn't know how this person could so shamelessly beg him. Back then in Phoenix Woods, when he broke his arms and legs, did he think of the slightest bit of kinship? Completely not, alright. Their relationship was already like fire and water long ago. But when it came to a matter of life and death, even someone as haughty as seventh young Master Qin still had no choice but to submit and beg for mercy. He lowered his noble head to ask for help from this fifth brother, whom he had never taken seriously. Fifth young Master Qin only found it somewhat funny. Eldest brother and second brother had already warned him many times not to provoke the little stoic. Yet he refused to listen. Eldest brother and second brother weren't here today, so how could he save him with his abilities? Fifth young master coldly lowered his eyes and took a step back. This action instantly chilled Qin Chang's heart, and he glared at him furiously. Fifth Qin. Sparks abruptly emerged from his outstretched left fist, and his entire left arm was immediately surrounded by flames of another color. Qin Chang's expression was extremely colorful, and he shouted in alarm, Use ice. Condense water into ice, hurry. The servants standing to the side gritted their teeth and charged forward with all their might. They raised their hands to release 2 or 3 water spirits, trying their best to stabilize the water flow and strenuously condense ice. In this world, not all cultivators could condense water into ice at will and transform the 5 spirits into any form. Evidently, these Heavenly Providence disciples weren't particularly talented. After struggling for less than a quarter of an hour, they couldn't continue condensing water into ice, and each of them collapsed on the ground with pale faces. At this moment, seventh young master's entire body was enveloped by 5 different colored flames. The seventh young master fearfully looked at the little stoic in front of him, whose expression didn't change in the slightest, and shouted in alarm, What did you do? That poisonous powder? Qin Chang's voice couldn't help but tremble as he recalled the half-basin of poisonous powder that was heading his way. You better stop now. If you dare to kill me, the ancestor will definitely not let you off. The little stoic swept him a chilly glance. Who in this world dares to stop me from killing someone I want to kill? The 5 yang intense poison tasted pretty good, right? You were the one who planned to poison Jojo first. Arbor coldly interrupted Qin Chang. Daring to do it but not daring to admit it? Didn't Qin Chang want to blow poisonous smoke into the cabin? What infuriated her was that the poisonous smoke that Qin Chang wanted to release was very unfriendly to the unborn child. Whoever dared to harm her child would have to pay with their life. If you're not as skilled as others, then just wait for death here. Arbor coldly threw down this sentence and turned to walk out the door. Slut. A trace of hatred flitted through Qin Chang's eyes. His entire body was like 5 balls of raging fire, and he charged straight at Arbor without another word. Since she had to make him die, then he would take her down with him. Chapter 49-33. After a light sound, Qin Chang abruptly felt pain in the back of his waist. His eyes widened in disbelief as his figure stiffened stiffly in midair. He was still 5 steps away from Arbor, and the person standing behind him with the greatest opportunity to attack him was a layer of icy coldness spread over his heart. He truly didn't expect that a weakling, who didn't have any presence in the clan, would actually suddenly kill him behind his back. A faint sound rang out. The 5th young master's sharp fingers pierced into his back, and they actually pierced through his stomach. His arm was like a piece of jade, so sturdy that one could only feel a chilly intent akin to ice. Qin Chang only felt dizzy, and the blood at the corner of his mouth couldn't stop dripping down. The 5 balls of flames that were originally enveloping his body slowly extinguished, as if they had lost all signs of life. Qin Chang turned his neck very stiffly, wanting to turn his head back to look at 5th Qin's handsome face that was always calm and indifferent. But when he turned his neck halfway, he could only watch helplessly as a spotless hand reached over and snapped his neck. A crisp crack sounded, as if a chicken's neck was being strangled. Qin Chang's head rolled down from his neck and landed on the ground. Blood spurted out from his head and it rolled all the way to the servants' feet. Those servants were truly scared silly, and their eyes could only stare foolishly at the 5th young master, whose upper body was drenched in blood. They had never seen such a young master before. He had clearly always been a gentle and elegant young master, but today, it was as if he had become a completely different person. When he killed someone, there wasn't the slightest bit of change in his eyes, which were as indifferent as colored glass. Ah! One of the servants finally reacted, and he scrambled to his feet on all 4s to run towards the other side of the ship. The 5th young master didn't seem to move much, but his upright and jade-like figure had already arrived in front of that fleeing servant. Reaching out 10 slender, jade-like fingers, Qin Xiu grabbed that servant's neck and twisted it lightly. Crack, crack, crack. A few minutes later, all of Qin Chang's servants were decapitated without exception. A few pairs of eyes stared straight in horror before they died. It seemed that even in death, they did not understand why the 5th young master, who had never fought for anything and was neither happy nor angry, would suddenly kill. Arbor was also dumbfounded. He subconsciously took a step back and looked at the 5th young master in front of him with vigilance and confusion. It was still that elegant and handsome young master, but his white robes were now stained red with blood. His pale face was somewhat transparent. When he saw the little stoic's unconscious retreat, more than half of the light in his eyes extinguished at once. 5th young master Qin lowered his head to look at his 10 slender fingers, muttering to himself, "I'm not a monster." He took a sudden step forward, trying to get closer to Arbor. Arbor hurriedly took 2 steps back and yelled at him, "Don't come any closer." The 5th young master froze in place, and then he put his hands behind his back and rubbed them against his clothes. I won't harm you." Arbor was stunned for a long while before he finally found his voice. "You drank the improved medicinal liquid? You accepted the heavenly fate's improvement? You..." Chapter 49-34. She didn't know what she should say. Although he normally looked like a weakling, his brain could still be considered smart. How could he be this stupid? Didn't he know clearly what kind of good outcome would come from accepting the heavenly fortune's modifications? Didn't he know the outcomes of those modified test subjects? "I just want to become a bit stronger." Little 5th Qin said softly and walked 2 more steps forward, feeling ill at ease. Don't be scared. I won't harm you." Arbor didn't retreat any further, but her almond-shaped eyes were round as she glared at 5th young master Qin in utter disapproval. She truly hated iron for not becoming steel. She had never seen such a stupid person. Just for the sake of becoming stronger, he unconditionally accepted the heavenly fortune's modifications? Wasn't he a young master of the Qin estate's direct line of descent? Just what kind of perverted organization was the heavenly fortune? For the sake of a successful experiment, they were even willing to harm their own direct line of descent. Although little 5th Qin's consciousness was still present, there was no guarantee that he would gradually degenerate into a killing tool in the future. Like a zombie, he would completely lose his consciousness and be without a sense of self. Could it be that he was willing to become stronger in such a meaningless manner? "Don't worry, I won't become that kind of thing." The zither cultivator hastily waved his hand and took another step forward. He said uneasily, You should leave. Here, I'll take care of the aftermath." Arbor was a bit shocked. Earlier, she was planning to take advantage of the fact that eldest Qin and Omega Kotoku, these 2 troublesome fellows, weren't on the ship to escape. She didn't expect that little 5th Qin would actually be willing to help her escape from here. The little stoic dazedly followed up, "Then I'll leave? What will you do?" The 5th young master's eyes brightened, and a peculiar expression seemed to ripple through his black pupils. Don't worry, I have a way. You leave behind a few Thunderfire bullets. Arbor took out a dozen or so Thunderfire bullets and handed them to him. The fifth young master took the Thunderfire bullets and looked up at her. After you leave, find a place to hide for a while. You mustn't linger on the surface of the river of forgetfulness. Eldest brother, second brother, and the others will definitely find you. Arbor had mixed feelings. He nodded and strode away. When she walked out of the dark cabin corridor, she stood at the end and couldn't help but turn around to take a look. She saw little Fifth Chin standing there far away. Half of his face cast a shadow over his handsome face, and his eyes looked exceptionally bright. It wasn't until the little stoic's figure disappeared from the ship's corridor that little Fifth Chin reluctantly retracted his gaze and lowered his head to look at the decapitated corpses strewn across the floor. Suddenly, he took out a dagger from his sleeve and stabbed himself. Boom! Large patches of fiery light spread out from the surface of the sea, dyeing this part of the sea red. Sparks of fire drifted along with the sea breeze, and the fire burned for an entire day and night. By the time Duan Yu's group's ship arrived, they could only see a small hole in the ship's hull. Under the flickering sparks, the ship's hull crackled in the wind. Duan Yu's expression instantly turned extremely grave. Search. On the surface and underwater, expand the search area for me. You must bring her back in one piece. He could sense Jojo's presence lingering here. This meant that she should have stayed on this ship for a period of time. His insides were burning, but there wasn't the slightest change on his face. However, those who understood this monarch knew that His Majesty's current mood was terrible, terrible to the extreme. Chapter 49-35. Young Sir. The maidservant standing guard outside the muslin canopy curtsied towards eldest young Sir Chin in unison. The eldest young Sir waved his hand and insipidly said, "Withdraw, all of you." He walked to the side of the bed and peered through the dark green canopy for a while, until the fifth young Sir's feeble voice was heard from inside. "Eldest brother." Only then did eldest young Sir Chin stretch out a hand to lift the canopy and slowly walk over. "Are you feeling better?" He sat down on the edge of the bed and reached out to take the soup bowl that a young maidservant handed over. He opened the lid and lightly stirred the soup with a spoon. His eyes were calm, without the slightest ripple. Leaning against the head of the bed, fifth young Sir Chin's gaze quickly swept over his face. He hastily nodded and assumed the appearance of listening to an elder brother's admonishment. Eldest young Sir Chin smiled faintly. "Little fifth, why didn't you tell eldest brother that you took the improved liquid?" I was worried that eldest brother would object." The fifth young Sir probably didn't expect his eldest brother to be so blunt and direct. The words that had been lingering in his heart for a long time became stammering as soon as they left his mouth, and he only gave this dry reply. Clang. The spoon smashed into the soup bowl, and a few drops of soup splashed out. Eldest young Sir Chin set down the bowl and gazed coldly at this younger brother of his. He scoffed and said, "You knew that I would object, so you deliberately hid it from me and took the original liquid on your own?" I'm sorry, eldest brother." "You aren't sorry to me, you are sorry to yourself." Eldest young Sir Chin said coldly, "You chose the path yourself, so you must bear the consequences of the future alone. No one can walk down this path for you." He really didn't expect that his fifth brother, who had always been indecisive, would actually choose such a path. Not everyone had the courage to take Heavenly Fortune's improved liquid. This improved liquid was even more abnormally dangerous than the original improved liquid. 8 or 9 out of 10 people who ingested it would mutate. This was gambling with their lives. Fifth young Sir Chin stole a glance at the eldest young Sir again and stammered, Eldest brother, don't be angry. Actually my luck is quite good." There was a 90% chance of turning into a walking corpse and a 10% chance of developing a powerful special ability. Hadn't he gambled correctly? He had obtained a great power that he had never dreamed of before. In terms of strength and agility, they had all received an abnormal increase in all aspects. Now, even if he were to face an extremely vicious person, he would still have the strength to fight. Eldest young Sir Chin couldn't help but be angered into laughter. You really are a reckless gambler. Our luck isn't bad. Fifth young Master Qin muttered softly. Qin Xian looked at him deeply and suddenly changed the topic. Your second brother brought people out to look for her. This little guy's divine sense hasn't fully recovered yet. He shouldn't be able to run too far. Fifth young Master Qin's heart jolted slightly, but he nodded very indifferently on the surface. Have a good rest. Eldest young Sir Qin handed the bowl of snow lotus soup to him before standing up and parting the floor-length muslin curtain to slowly walk outside. When he reached the door, he slowly turned his head and glanced at fifth young Master Qin. I've already helped you erase the traces you left on the ship. You need to be more careful in the future. Fifth young Sir's heart froze, and he abruptly turned his head to look at his eldest brother. However, he saw eldest young Sir Qin leave without looking back after throwing down the sentence, leaving behind only his slender back view. Chapter 49-36. Omega Kotoku originally thought that he would be able to catch that troublesome little thing in less than 3 days. Who knew the group searched the sea for a total of 15 days but still could not find a single hair of that little fellow. It was not until 10 days later that second young master admitted that his search for Arbor had failed. Jojo had already escaped without a trace. That mischievous girl did not set foot in the Forgetful River clan's territory, nor did she go to the Great Jubilee City at the heart of the Forgetful River's economy. That little fellow had completely disappeared from the Forgetful River's territory as if she had evaporated into thin air. There was no sign of her presence at all. Omega Kotoku had reason to suspect that she had already recovered her divine sense and was probably hiding in her own star domain. Since this little girl intended to hide, it would be very difficult to dig her out. Even though second young master was extremely intelligent, he had to admit that this little rascal had slipped away right under his nose. No matter how intelligent those two from the Qin estate were, they would never have thought that Arbor would travel over 1,000 miles in one night and sneak into a small fishing village. For the past half a month, Arbor had settled down in this fishing village. During the day, she would cultivate and read books to recover her divine sense. When night fell, she would conceal her presence and quietly float back to the abyss of the sacrificial sea. The little fellow had been pacing back and forth at the entrance of the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Omega Kotoku still did not understand her character well enough. If he really understood Arbor's character like Jojo's lotus, it would be impossible for him to not see her for such a long time. Just like that, Arbor hid during the day and came out at night. For the past half a month, she had been waiting for Jojo's lotus at the entrance of the abyss of the sacrificial sea. The more she waited, the more anxious and disappointed she became. Occasionally she would take out the condensed soul orb to take a look. When she saw the faint shadow of the ancient Emolien curled up in the soul orb and sleeping soundly, her heart could not stop beating wildly. Something had happened, something had definitely happened. If it was not for her rationality that firmly restrained her, she might have already jumped into the abyss of the sacrificial sea to find out what had happened. There were only about 100 families in this small fishing village. From one end of the village to the other, every family was very familiar with each other. These fishermen usually went out to the sea to catch fish before dawn. They had to return to the village before sunset. Otherwise, at night, the dangers on the surface of the sea would be unknown. At the crack of dawn, Xiao Mu returned to the fishing village. Mrs. Feng was already very familiar with her habits these days. In the first few days, Sister Feng was worried for a long time and persuaded her not to go out to sea at night. However, he soon discovered that this seemingly young girl was a very capable person. There was no need for him to worry about her at all. Thus, he gradually relaxed. Arbor walked into the village expressionlessly with a big-headed fish in his hand. When the fishermen saw her, they all smiled and greeted her out of habit. "Little doctor, you're back?" "Little doctor, you've caught another big fish today." This little doctor was really a strange person. Every day, he would go out to sea in the middle of the night and come back with a fish in his hand. It was not much, just one fish. However, there were only 4 or 5 people in Feng Qi's family. Such a big fish was definitely enough to eat for a day. Everyone could not help but envy Feng Qi. Back then, when the couple took in this young madam of unknown origin, they had secretly laughed at her. The world was so difficult. Who didn't hide some food in the cellar? How could they have extra food to entertain guests? Chapter 49-37. Only Feng Qi and his wife were foolish enough to take in this pregnant woman of unknown origins. But now, it seemed that Feng Qi and his wife weren't foolish at all. They were simply too shrewd. After interacting with her for a while, everyone in the small fishing village knew. Not only was this young madam exceptionally exquisite and good-looking, but her medical skills were also superb. She read and practiced during the day and wandered out to sea at night. At daybreak, she would bring some food back to Feng Qi's family. Sometimes it was a large fish, and sometimes it was some sea shrimp and crabs. Feng Qi's family's simple life was getting better and better. When Arbor entered, Madame Feng was standing up with their 3-year-old son, Mao Mao, in her arms. When Mao Mao hazily saw the little stoic enter, he scampered over and raised his small hand to rub Arbor's stomach. "Good morning, wife." "Arbor." Madame Feng's mouth twitched, and she laughingly scolded him for being a brat. She walked up and carried her son to wash up. "Little physician, don't mind them." The day before yesterday, old Uncle Wang from next door was teasing Mao Mao, saying that if the little physician was pregnant with a girl, Mao Mao would have a wife in the future. I didn't expect this child to remember it and still think about it even now. Madame Feng was laughing uncontrollably. Arbor expressionlessly glanced at Madame Feng and her son before hanging the big-headed fish on the rack. "Sister-in-law, I'm going to sleep." After all these days, Madame Feng had long figured out the little stoic's work and rest habits. She hastily nodded and replied, Okay, I'll call you for lunch. Steam this fish today. It looks quite plump and delicious." After Mao Mao finished washing his hands, he scampered back to Arbor's side. He raised his small hand and pressed it against Arbor's stomach, caressing it again as he muttered, "Wife." Arbor's brows suddenly creased. He felt as if a layer of energy suddenly flowed out from his stomach and was about to hit that little imp. The little stoic's eyes were sharp and her hands were nimble. She swiftly lifted Mao Mao up with a flick of her slender hand and pressed down a layer of divine energy, completely blocking out that sudden attack. Boom! The opposite wooden shelf suddenly fell apart, and the big-headed fish that was originally hanging on the shelf also fell to the ground with a dong sound. Her voice attracted Mrs. Feng's attention. He looked at the scene in front of him in surprise. What's wrong?" "I'm fine." Arbor put down the adorable Mao Mao and said with a wooden face, "The wooden frame suddenly fell down just now. Fortunately, it didn't hit anyone." Madame Feng was startled. She reached out to take Mao Mao, hugged him, and patted him gently. She muttered, "Last time, I told him to strengthen the wooden utensils at home. It's fine. Don't be scared." Arbor turned around and glanced at the mother and daughter. Then, he turned around and entered his cubicle. His expression suddenly became very serious. The little stoic placed her small hand on her stomach and stroked it before saying seriously, "Baby Mo, Mom is telling you, you can't bully other children in the future. Furthermore, you can't use such a powerful force recklessly." Qiao Qiao was also astonished. As expected, this little brat of hers was precocious. He could unleash his power, even through her stomach. If she hadn't reacted quickly just now and snatched Mao Mao away to block that powerful force, the consequences would have been unthinkable. How could Mao Mao end up well after being hit so harshly by her own brat? Chapter 49-38. If other children say things you don't like to hear, you can reason with them. Arbor felt her stomach heat up slightly, and she raised her hand to rub it. She was baffled but also inexplicably amused. The previous few times, her stomach would react from time to time. At that time, she thought it was her imagination. She didn't expect this little brat's precognitive awareness to be so strong that he could even perceive the outside world now. Even Arbor couldn't estimate how powerful his divine sense was. Actually, this feeling of having someone by her side really wasn't bad. She originally thought that after Jojo's Lotus left, Jojo would be all alone. But now, she discovered that the one in her stomach would occasionally react strangely. Of course, this fellow's ideology hadn't fully formed yet, so his actions would sometimes be a bit out of line. However, Jojo was still very happy. Be good and don't randomly beat other children in the future. After you come out, Mother will take you to eat all the rare delicacies in the world and see all the mountains and rivers, the little stoic prattled as she raised her hand to rub her stomach to appease him. Strangely enough, this little fellow seemed to understand her words and slowly calmed down. After that slight heat disappeared, Arbor checked the pulses of both her hands worriedly. Everything was so normal that it was a bit comical. It was said that a woman's first trimester needed constant attention, so it definitely wouldn't be too smooth. What Arbor wanted to say was that she didn't feel anything at all. She ate, slept, and did whatever she needed to do. She never vomited like other people during their first trimester, and there wasn't anything she could or couldn't eat. She seemed to be able to eat everything. The key was whether she liked to eat or not. Baby Mo was definitely an excellent little fellow, Arbor thought to herself. She rubbed her stomach and was about to lie down on the bed. Then she heard the sound of a door being kicked open. Little Physician, where is Little Physician? Little Physician, quickly ask Little Physician to save him. Brother Fong encountered a sea shark and was bitten. Just as Arbor sat up, her black pupils couldn't help but contract. She reached out to pick up a small black butterfly that had flown in through the wooden window, and her figure abruptly disappeared into the air. Madame Fong came with the messenger and knocked on Arbor's door. After patting for a long time without any response, the person who came flew up and kicked the door open. The two of them rushed in and took a look. They couldn't help but be stunned. There was no one in the room. The young doctor was nowhere to be found. He was here just now, Madame Fong muttered to herself. Arbor's figure flashed to the west of the fishing village and jumped toward the beach. Just now, the poison-tailed butterfly had sent a message saying that the Omega Kotoku was here. She didn't know if Omega Kotoku was lucky or if Arbor was unlucky. The two young masters of the Chin estate were already planning to return to shore, so they passed by this small, shabby fishing village on the way. Second young master suddenly had a thought and wanted to come up and take a look. He did not know why he had such a strong thought. At this moment, he just wanted to enter the fishing village and take a look. More than a dozen ships of heavenly fate were docked near the fishing village. A group of people was disembarking from the ships when they suddenly paused. Omega Kotoku narrowed her eyes and looked up at a large flying spirit tool in the air. Heh! Eldest young Master Chin shook his head with a smile. This Zhangzhou's emperor is truly a lingering spirit. Duan Yu, this guy, chased after them again. Was he crazy? They already said that the Stoic was not with them, so why did he keep chasing after them and be an eyesore? Second young master's expression abruptly changed, and he abruptly flew out. The little Stoic was definitely here. Chapter 49-39. Eldest Chin glanced at his departing younger brother and calmly waited for the group of people to disembark from the flying spirit tool while fanning himself with an ink-painted mountain and river fan. Duan Yu had just landed with several hidden guards from the secret pavilion when he saw Eldest Chin walking up to them with a grin. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. I didn't expect to be so fated to meet your majesty again in this kind of obscure fishing village. Eldest young sir was grinning on the surface, but he inwardly cursed all 18 generations of Duan Yu's ancestors. Scoundrel idiot! He must have used some despicable method to plant some strange item on Duan Yu's body to track their footsteps here. Duan Yu expressionlessly glanced at him and raised his hand, causing several shadows to scuttle in all directions of the fishing village. Humph, you think we will fall for your trap just because you obstructed us and said some useless nonsense? Eldest young sir rolled his eyes several times and said with a fake smile, Your Majesty is overthinking. Xian didn't mean that. Scram. Eldest young sir, why the heck didn't he want to talk to the person in front of him? After Duan Little Fourth freaking became the emperor, he was becoming less and less human. Duan Yu couldn't be bothered with him and directly bypassed Qin Xian, who was blocking him, to direct the group of hidden guards. Turn over every inch. Turn over every inch of land. Just kill whoever dares to obstruct us. Eldest young Serchin harumphed inwardly and slowly paced behind Duan Yu, nagging along the way, "Your Majesty, don't distrust people. I'm telling you, the little stoic really wouldn't stay in this kind of ghastly place. She's such an active person. How could she stay in this kind of lousy village that doesn't even have a snack street?" Duan Yu silently glanced back at eldest young Serchin before moving toward the back of the village. Eldest young Serchin's eyes flashed, and he also shot over like a bolt of lightning. He cursed in his mind, "It looks like today's battle is unavoidable." He didn't know how many people Duan Yu brought over, and he didn't know what the odds of Heavenly Fate's disciples winning were. At the same time, young Sir Omega Kotoku had already rushed to the west side of the village, near the beach. "Jojo, I see you. Stop hiding." Second young master said coldly, "Come out. Let's have a good talk." It was quiet all around. The only response that second young master Qin received was the sound of waves crashing against the shore as they pushed forward layer by layer. Qin Xen looked around and suddenly raised her hand to release a Saint Power barrier. The four walls formed an invisible cage, firmly confining the area. However, even after a long while, the sealed area was still empty. Nothing had appeared. Omega Kotoku took a deep breath and quickly moved to the seaside. A trace of lightning spirit energy shot out from his fingertips. As soon as the thunder spirit entered the water, it slithered forward like an electric snake, emitting sizzling sounds along the way. Arbor was hiding in the depths of the sea. Naturally, she saw that the electric current released by the second young master was chasing after her through the ripples. Bastard! Still not giving up on trying to catch Jojo. Infuriated, Lady Jojo drew talisman projections in the water, completely concealing her presence and hiding in the sea. 36 void concealment talismans completely concealed her figure. No matter how the electric snake shuttled back and forth in the water, it still didn't discover Arbor, who was just inches away. Lady Jojo was inwardly smug. "Lady Jojo has entered the water, yet you still want to catch me? Simply a fantasy." Chapter 4940. He was just about to stealthily dive another 10,000 kilometers so that Omega Kotoku wouldn't be able to find him. Suddenly he heard eldest young Serchin's chuckling voice. "Your Majesty, I said there's no one here, but you didn't believe me. Look, it's empty all around. How could there be anyone here?" Duan Yu cast a sidelong glance at the eldest young Sir before his gaze landed on the water. He was still musing in his mind. It's true that Charles' scent is here, which means that this little fellow definitely came here before. Besides, she's good at swimming, so could she be hiding underwater? Go. Don't dilly-dally. Go. Go. Urging voices rang out one after another, interspersed with the wails and cries of the village women and children. Duan Yu turned around and saw a short and stout wintermelon wielding a purple-gold melon hammer leading a dozen or so disciples of the Heavenly Fate Academy. They were ferociously reprimanding the villagers from one end of the village to another as if they were herding ducks. The villagers' wails shook the heavens. Arbor could hear them vaguely from underwater, but she couldn't help but be enraged. As expected, this scoundrel Omega Kotoku was using the villagers to threaten her to show herself again. Duan Yu coldly glanced at eldest young Serchin and bluntly reprimanded, "Your methods are extremely despicable." Anger flashed in eldest young Serchin's eyes, and he turned to glare at that short and stout wintermelon. "Why did you escort so many villagers over?" This subordinate felt that since that little stoic wasn't willing to show herself, then, acting on your own initiative. Eldest young Sir Omega Kotoku sternly reprimanded. Duan Yu snorted. "Don't be pretentious. If it weren't for one of their orders, why would this short and stout wintermelon man act on his own initiative and escort so many villagers over?" The second young Sir sent a look at Duguling beside him. The latter chuckled and suddenly threw a fire net at the two hidden guards of the secret pavilion with a flip of his hand. With a whoosh, the fire net that had suddenly formed suddenly covered the heads of the two shadow guards, firmly imprisoning the two of them. Although the two secret guards who were caught in the fire net were shocked, their expressions did not change at all. One of them held a dagger and used one hand to draw the fire net, while the other used the water spirit energy in his hand to attack the net. Dugu Ling's cultivation was above the two of them. With their strength alone, there was no way they could break free from the net. At the critical moment, a silver-white flame suddenly landed on the layer of fire net, directly engulfing the fire net, releasing the two secret guards. At the same time, a harsh glint flashed across Duan Yu's eyes, and he raised his hand. With a bang sound, dazzling fireworks scattered in the sky, forming the word, song. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but smile wryly on the inside as he grumbled inwardly about his second brother's eagerness for success and instant benefits. He just knew that ever since Duan Yu became Tsong Prefecture's monarch, he could no longer treat him as a person, just look at his bad temper. Without saying a word, he asked for reinforcements. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with them. In less than a moment, dozens of giant air transportation spiritual tools flew over from nearby. From the looks of it, each air transportation spiritual tool could accommodate at least 300 people. In this way, the number of people on Tsong Prefecture's side perfectly overwhelmed Tianyun's side. Gathering firepower and starting a gang fight at the slightest disagreement simply suited forth Duan's personality too well. Ha! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh. The air transportation spiritual tools stopped above their heads. Immediately, people opened the spiritual tool cabins and rapidly descended from the sky. Chapter 49-41. Duan Si gathered 5,000 helpers in minutes, and a dense mass of heads gathered in front of Omega Kotoku and Eldest Qin, causing them to frown incessantly. When they saw the other side expressionlessly taking out divine stone cannons from storage talismans, they were stupefied. Everything before them shouldn't be real, right? Duan Si, this fraud, was quite a fraud. Did he already prepare to start a war with their Qin estate beforehand? That's why he gathered so many divine stone cannons and planned to fire a big shot at them. Dugu Ling's grinning expression couldn't help but change, and he inwardly cursed, pervert, as he swiftly retreated to Omega Kotoku's side. Fire! Duan Yu decisively threw down this word. Eldest young Sir Qin twitched his mouth. When he saw the dozens of divine stone cannons, he turned the cannons and fired at them in unison. This guy didn't care about his image anymore and immediately tossed aside his fan to scamper away. The villagers screamed in panic under the bombardment of the divine stone cannons. They hugged their heads and squatted on the side, praying for the blessings of the gods and Buddhas. Eldest young Sir Omega Kotoku sneered as he dodged a cannonball fired at him. Duan Si, you're becoming more and more ruthless nowadays. You don't even care about the lives of these little villagers? Hypocrite. Duan Yu's expression was icy as he interrupted him. I already felt that you were very suspicious when we were in Phoenix Grove. Sure enough, you're a bunch of people harboring evil intentions. Didn't these people from the Qin estate want to use these villagers' lives to threaten Jojo just now? Now, they were pretending to be benevolent, righteous, and virtuous people, and they even put on an expression of crying injustice for the common people. The feeling of being bombarded by divine stone cannons isn't bad, right? Second brother. Eldest young Sir Qin shouted from afar. What were they waiting for if not to run now? Duan Si, this guy, clearly came prepared. Look at how many people he brought, and there were even divine stone cannons as a backup. They definitely wouldn't end well if they stayed. However, Omega Kotoku was unwilling to resign to this. He could clearly sense that the little stoic was nearby, but he had to give up now? Boom. Omega Kotoku's expression turned ugly as he dodged a few god stones. His eyes narrowed slightly. He would remember what Duan Si had done. Second brother, aren't you leaving yet? After running for a while, eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist looking back. At this moment, he saw another large group of air transportation spiritual artifacts flying over from afar. It was clear how much of a scam Duan Yu, this black-hearted guy, was. There must be a lot of Tsangzhou disciples in the nearby sea area. After Duan Yu released the signal, they all swiftly gathered and rushed over. This was the second batch of Tsangzhou Dark Guards. Perhaps there would be a third and fourth batch after that. Go! At eldest young Master Qin's command, all the heavenly fate disciples hastily put away their weapons and hastily turned to run towards the beach on the east side of the village. Their ship was docked there, so they should quickly board the ship and escape. After all, even if he couldn't afford to offend them, he could still avoid them. A trace of fury flitted through Omega Kotoku's pitch-black eyes. After running for a while, he suddenly sensed something and turned his head back. With this glance, he saw a figure burrowing out of the water with a splash. Like a lively little mermaid, the figure swayed its legs as if it couldn't withstand the water pressure around it at all and easily swam up from the depths of the sea. A head emerged from the water. As soon as Omega Kotoku stopped, the dozen or so divine stone cannons behind him fired at his feet. Chapter 49-42. As he cursed in his mind, he had already leaped into the air, having no choice but to scramble upwards. When he turned back to look, he saw Duan-si, that swindler, flying to Jojo's side in a flash. He took out a thin blanket from his inner world and wrapped it around the little stoic, who was looking up at him. He picked her up at once and heaved a long sigh of relief. Fury flitted through Omega Kotoku's eyes as he cursed inwardly. Why do I find this Duan-si more and more annoying the more I look at him? Afterwards, he couldn't continue watching, and a series of divine stone cannons blasted second young Master Qin away with a series of booms. When he returned to the ship in a huff, he saw Qin Xian looking at him with a spurious smile. What are you laughing at? Don't think that you're smart. The others aren't easy to deal with either. Look at Duan Yu, this swindler. He had both men and cannons. How thoroughly prepared he was, waiting for them here. Omega Kotoku was furious. He fiercely glared at Qin Xian, feeling abnormally uncomfortable in his heart. She was so close. Even at such a close distance, he still couldn't catch her. He still let her slip away right before his eyes. Simply utterly abominable. Eldest young master, second young master, the people from Zhangzhou are chasing us with sacred stone cannons. Fuck. This bunch of lunatics. Eldest young Master Qin rolled his eyes at the sky and hastily said, Now isn't the time to shed all pretense of cordiality with them. Hurry and leave. Don't just stand there, set sail, leave. Go go go. Boom, boom, boom. The sacred stone cannons fired nonstop. Young Master Omega Kotoku and his men's ships were all blasted out of the sea and fled for their lives from the shore. On the other side, Duan Yu looked down at the little stoic's expressionless face and reflexively rubbed her head. It was only when he saw that the little stoic was safe and sound that his heart finally set at ease. The emotions that had been burning for so many days finally stabilized. He reached out and wrapped her in the thin blanket, wiping her wet hair as he did so. The silver flame in his palm flickered faintly, and in the blink of an eye, he dried the little stoic's clothes under the blanket. Duan Yu. The little stoic glanced at him aggrievedly. Jojo's Lien is missing. Duan Yu's heart sank. What happened? Come up first. He pulled her to the shore and looked down at her. Jojo's lotus and rotten peach blossom were tricked into the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Jojo has been waiting for them at the entrance, but they didn't show up. The little stoic became downcast as she spoke. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his recent days were incomparably miserable. He couldn't open his star domain, couldn't find his friends, and couldn't wait for Mo Lien and Rotten Peach Blossom. He didn't even know where they were. Most importantly, he was being chased by that perverted Omega Kotoku. Don't be afraid. Duan Yu said in a low voice. No matter which corner of the world this swindler scampers to, I can help you dig him out. Arbor nodded, and his heart instantly felt a bit more at ease. Do you think something will happen to him? The little stoic tried to find a topic to talk about. Actually, how would Duan Yu know even if he asked? At that time, she had at least seen Jojo's lotus through the phantom image of ancient Mo Lien's soul. Duan Yu was thousands of miles away, so it was even more impossible for him to know the situation. The little stoic lowered her head. Suddenly, a warm hand caressed her head. Silly or not, no matter who gets into trouble, nothing can happen to Mo Lien. Why? Haven't you heard? Scourges last for 10,000 years. Chapter 49-43. Arbor blinked, feeling that Duan Yu's words made sense. After all, Jojo's lotus was a person of great fortune no matter how one looked at it. She couldn't be paranoid and scare herself. She had to firmly believe that Jojo's lotus would definitely return. But no matter how she comforted herself, her anxious and uneasy emotions didn't diminish in the slightest. It had already been so long, so Jojo was very worried. A shadow flashed, and the dull-witted Mo abruptly popped out from Arbor's side. During this period of time, Jojo's mood was uneasy as ancient Mo Lien was in a deep slumber inside the Soul Pearl. Mo would come out from the storage talisman every day. She didn't speak much and just quietly sat there with the little stoic. Sometimes, she would follow the little stoic around the village to treat patients. Other people couldn't see her half-wisp of soul form, so she would walk around the stoic. She watched the little stoic administer acupuncture and medicine, watched the little stoic treat patients. After watching too much, this dull-witted fellow would occasionally ask a few questions. When Arbor saw her swaying out, he reflexively raised his hand to rub her head. Mo was also a lonely person. Sometimes, when the little stoic looked at her, she would occasionally feel a bit of heartache. When she thought of how she once wandered alone in that isolated river of time and space for so long, she would deeply feel heartache for her. In the past, she was also like this. She had no friends, no family, and even nothing. Medicine. Mo dazedly followed beside her and spat out a word. Duan Yu glanced sideways at her. Jojo, this faintly discernible soul body seemed to be very unstable, as if it would dissipate into the air at any moment. My good friend. Arbor grabbed Mo's hand and asked placatingly, "What medicine?" Medicine. Mo tilted her head, seemingly trying to express something with great effort but unable to. Thus, she kept wandering around Arbor like a headless fly. Where are you feeling unwell? When Arbor asked this, he couldn't resist rolling his eyes at himself. Mo was a soul body, so how could she feel unwell? It was simply hilarious. What are you trying to express? Don't worry, think slowly. It won't be too late to tell me when you can express it. Mo understood Arbor's words and nodded seriously. His expression was a little funny. Jojo. Duan Yu smiled at her. Right now, halfway through his words, he glanced coldly to the left. Mrs. Feng hugged Mao Mao and took a few steps back in fright from the man's cold gaze. She hurriedly hugged Mao Mao tightly in her arms and shrunk her neck. With a face full of fear, she stammered, Little doctor. When the noble young man beside the young doctor gave the order to use the Godstone cannons to attack those young masters, he didn't care about what the others would do. The terrifying aura of a superior being assaulted him. Mrs. Feng muttered in her heart, when I first picked up this young doctor, I already felt that she wasn't an ordinary person. How could an ordinary person have such an exquisite little face that was made of snow? It's okay, sister-in-law. It's okay now. Arbor stepped forward and comforted the mother and son. What happened to Mao Mao's hand? I tripped when I was running earlier. It's nothing serious. You'll be fine soon after washing it and applying some medicine. Arbor raised his hand to wash the child and apply medicine, but Mrs. Feng seemed to be frightened and hastily took another step back. Chapter 49-44. Arbor's small hand paused in midair, and he paused for a moment before handing a small porcelain bottle to Madame Feng. Then wash the child and apply the medicine. Madame Feng knew that her distant action just now was a bit hurtful, so she smiled at Arbor in embarrassment. Thank you, little physician. Xiao Mu nodded, her expression calm and indifferent. We will leave immediately. Thank you for your care this past half a month, Madame Feng. I'll leave some rice for you guys. I hope you don't dislike it. After saying this, Arbor nodded at Madame Feng before turning to walk to Duan Yu and whispering, Let's go. Duan Yu turned around and gestured to the hidden guards nearby. Everyone quickly regrouped and leaped up, heading for the air transportation spirit tools parked in midair. Arbor pulled the dazed Mo Bingyun and flew onto the first air transportation spirit tool with Duan Yu. It was not until the dozens of air transportation spirit tools were far away that the other villagers dared to gather at the beach. They all sighed for a long time before talking all at once. Who exactly is this little physician? Wow, look at her aura. She should be a noble daughter from some large patrician family, right? Madame Fong, eh? Some villagers called Madame Fong several times, but she ignored them and ran toward her house with the child in her arms. The villagers pursed their lips. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Aya, that little physician left, so who will treat Brother Fong's injury?" Brother Fong is still lying on the beach at the east side of the village, right? When they were fleeing for their lives earlier, none of them cared about Brother Fong, who was bitten by a sea shark and couldn't move his lower limbs. Now that the crisis was resolved, they remembered that Brother Fong was still lying on the beach. "That's right, oh my, this old leg of mine," the little physician said. "It would be completely fine after 5 injections. But it's only been 3 injections. Who are we going to find for the other 2 injections?" Aya, this little physician, seriously, Madame Fong didn't listen to the villagers' complaints. She carried Mau Mau and sprinted home, pushing open the door to her house with a bang. He ran into the small courtyard and took a look. The rice jar was filled with shining white rice, and there were a few strips of bacon and some vegetables beside it. She stood blankly in the courtyard with the child in her arms for a long time, her heart filled with regret. She had been with the little doctor for almost a month. How could she not know what kind of person she was? Just now, why did she hurt people like this? How could a young doctor harm innocent villagers like them? The dull-witted Mo initially sat next to Xiao Mu. Afterwards, she stood up and circled around Xiao Mu. All the secret guards who were above the god realm could see that this soul was walking around the little crown princess as if he had ADD. He seemed to want to express something but couldn't find the words to express it. "Ciao ciao." Mo's voice was slow and dragged out. "It's not worth it." Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what this half-soul was talking about. Arbor looked at her, blinked, and suddenly smiled at her. She suddenly understood what this blockhead wanted to say. Mo wanted to tell Arbor that those villagers weren't worth her trouble, and she didn't need to be in a bad mood. Although this fellow was blockhead, he wasn't an idiot. After being by Arbor's side for so long, Mo saw that the villagers only wanted to get some benefits from JoJo. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.